pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming this evening. I should state before we start that we are holding this meeting pursuant to the governor's order in person and remote via Zoom. So we do not have any board members attending remotely. But if we did, they'd be up there. So welcome. I will move on to the roll.
Trustee Guyer.
Here.
Trustee Spurling. Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
And Trustee Betzinger.
All right, we do have a quorum this evening. We'd like to move into public comments. This is the opportunity for any member of the public to address the board on any topic. Is there anyone wishing to? Look at that. All right,
And I did just check email, voicemail. We did not have any comments that came in any other way.
perfect. All right, so I did have my own public comment, and I'm sure others will chime in as well. This is literally the last week that Rich is going to be employed with us in Montgomery. We do have a little a plaque honoring your service here, and I noticed that your staff's here as well. I can't understate the impact that you've had on this community, on me personally, and we're sad to see you go. So with that, I'd like to call you up and present this to you. I should state that he's retiring, not using us for, let me get my mask on.
Totally made it sound like he's like,
Right. He's leaving. He does know that he's leaving on his own accord.
he looked a little surprised.
Yeah. So, let's go over there so
Yep,
we can take.
Get out in the
I know
middle
I like
there.
the door and everything, but.
yep, out in the middle.
Sorry.
Sure.
All right. Here, why don't you get your fingerprints on it? All right, let's read it though. So this is the retirement award. It's only given out once in a career. Yeah. Unless you're Jordan. Presented to Richard Young on February 26, 2021, in appreciation for your years of dedicated service. Your loyalty and friendship will be long remembered. Congratulations. Thank you. No problem. Yeah, you want to give a speech?
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and it's been my honor to work with the village board and the plan commission, and I have to say, my fine staff, they do a great job. They make me look good, and I appreciate all of the friendships, but also the hard work that also our consultants do, Pete Wallers and Laura Julian, part of our development team that are very important to the village, and I really have treasured my time working here. I'm glad we were able to get some things done. And, you know, one of my goals, as you all know, was to try to see some activity in the downtown. And I'm glad to see that finally happening after so many years of talking about it and trying to plan around it and work through some challenges. And I know that the village is in good hands with the staff that you have and the staff coming on board. So I wish you all the best, and thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
When's your official last day? Friday?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll be in to bug you before then.
I'm sure you will.
All right. Thanks, Rich. All right, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll read the items and entertain a motion for approval. We have minutes of the village board meeting of February 8th of 2021, accounts payable through February 22nd, of 2021, accounts receivable report for January of 2021, and then a proclamation for Engineers Week.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes. All right, that carries 5-0. Thank you. Under items for discussion this evening, we just have one item, and it's a big one, schematic design and cost estimates for the Public Works building. Director Young, I'm going to say that every time tonight, just for you. Director Wolf.
Thank you, President Rowley. Tonight, staff wanted to take some time to present the results of the hard work that's taken place since Williams Architects presented the space needs analysis to the Village of Montgomery Board. Staff has been working side by side with Engineering Enterprises, Williams Architects, and Canopy Construction through the schematic design process. The purpose of schematic design is to produce a range of possible options that meet the village's requirements. The overarching goal at the end of schematic design is for the client, the village, to have in their hands a design that they are happy with to move forward into design development. As we work through this presentation, I would like to remind you that this is a very elaborate project and requires a great amount of detail. Please keep in mind that all the cost estimates that were calculated were based on the drawings and information that were available at the time. As this project progresses, changes to the building and cost estimates may take place with the intent of the design and cost estimates being refined before recommending the issuance of bonds to the Village of Montgomery Board for this project. Cost estimates will become more detailed and more accurate as we move through the design development phase for this project. The design development phase involves finalizing the design and specifying such items as materials, windows and door locations, and general structural details. This phase also yields a more detailed site plan, as well as floor plans, elevations, and section drawings with full dimensions. Once the village, architects, engineers, and construction manager are comfortable with the drawings produced from the design development, the next phase will be construction documents. These drawings typically include specifications for construction details and materials. Bidding will take place after the documents are finalized. After the completion of bidding, Canopy will be able to provide the village with a guaranteed maximum price for the project, and process of construction will start to take place. Currently, the plan will be to have 2 early bid packages for this project, including site work as well as structural steel and precast concrete panels due to the long lead time. So now that I've given a short recap of the project, I would like to turn it over to Pete Wallers with Engineering Enterprises to go through the site work that has been prepared for this project.
Open for a second, you would just open up a water presentation and roll with that.
I thought about it, and what you might find interesting is that there's only going to be 4 slides, so that might be a first right there.
Who are you and what did you do with me?
I know. So we're just going to give a quick overview of the site work. As Mark said, a lot of this stuff is in progress, but we can report on what we know. With me tonight is Kurt Detman. He's the project manager for EI on the project, so he's going to go over the more detailed site plan. I'm going to start off with just a kind of an overview of the master site plan. As you recall, we're doing some work to try to stitch the existing site together with the new site, and this just gives you an idea of the entire property. And really, a couple things I just wanted to mention. There will be access to the new facility from both Nell Road and Auckett Road. there's actually two ways you can get to the Public Works, the new Public Works site. One is through the conventional entrance to the Public Works facility, and you just go to the, a little bit to the east of the building and then back through. And then if you go further down, you can get to the salt storage area at the second entrance on Nell. So it's, eventually we'll have other improvements that are added, material bins and things like that. And then as work is done on different elements and maybe some future projects, we abandon facilities, we can keep this up to date. So not a lot going on outside of the proposed Public Works facility, obviously, but a few things will be happening. But the main thing is that we'll have access to the site from two different directions. So if there's any road work in the future at either location, you know, we'll still have access to the building, which I think is important. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kurt to go through the site work where most of the action is.
Thanks, Pete. I'm Kurt Detman. Oh, Pete didn't cue me up. So, just hit enter. Okay. It's not my computer. So, with the detailed site plan, not knowing exactly what you guys have or haven't seen, just to kind of run you through some quick things. There's a lot of dimensions on here we've shown, and what this is really doing is it's showing we're meeting the guidelines of the ordinance of Montgomery, and when it comes to drive aisles, widths, radius, and parking stall widths, parking stall dimensions, all sorts of other different things, and then also fire access around the building, as well as the water main that's looped around the building, providing the correct fire coverage. And then also there's an existing 12-inch raw water line that we're having to reroute as well. That's the double line you see on the east side. The sanitary sewer, which I probably could go back and show, but it's on the north side of the building there. It's that angled, that's the sanitary sewer. It's coming from Nell, and it's all gravity, which is a big plus. The drive aisle that's on the west side is a little narrow, and we're gonna have to work with village staff to see if, you know, one way is gonna work access-wise, but it is only 21 feet wide back-to-back, which is very tight for two-way traffic and not allowed. So we're gonna have to discuss and see if just one way, more of an emergency, would be fine. And as a side note, there are security gates on both sides. They're labeled there. So access would be for village staff and emergency vehicles. We could probably do Knox boxes and things like that. And the security fence actually connects into the fence that's existing on the property on the west side near the salt building, and on the east side in that northeast corner where the access drive continues to the north. The detention pond that we're proposing is across the creek on the east side of the property there, nestled between the railroad tracks, spur that's there, and then the creek as well. We'll be going through design. It's a floodplain area, wetland area, so a little touchy, but we're going to be working through getting an online detention system that works there with the drainage for the site. Storm sewer is not shown currently in the site because we're still working on a lot of different details, but at least wanted you to see the general layout of the geometry, the water main, the sanitary sewer. Those are big pieces that we want to make sure that we want to show early on so we don't have any questions. Other than that, we're going to be going through sidewalk arrangements and final parking arrangements on the east side with Williams Architects. Final design once we get everything finalized and schematic here, and then get those kind of coordinated. The other pieces on the site plan you'll notice here at the northeast area, there's a proposed, or sorry, a future fuel island area. We wanted to make sure we show this as an option, and just in case it happens sooner than later, but more than likely it'll be a future option. On the south end, there is the access off Awcut. In the area off Awcut, we have the setback entrance there that provides good turning movements. And the full semi trucks, WB65 is what they're called for the modeling, but the full-size over-the-road trucks can come in and leave the site and can also access all the way around the site completely. We know that the village receives several trucks a month, and this is to provide access for those deliveries. On Alcott, we're proposing a widening of that to 3 lanes to show a left turn lane into the site. This will go east just to the point where it gets to the IDOT section at the taper there, you can see on the page. And then the west, it actually just goes to the west just past where that existing crossing is located. And that crossing will hopefully be removed. It's on our goal to get that old rail removed because it's out of service. And we're working closely with BNSF for the access across the rail as well as the removal of those old rail tracks. Other than that, I don't know, Pete, did you have anything else?
That's it, unless there's questions for us right now or later.
Question, since Dallas is having all these problems, that proposed generator is gas, electric, propane, what is it?
So current,
You want to sit down? You can sit down if you want. That's fine. You got it?
So currently, the plan will be for the generator at the Public Works site to be powered off of natural gas. We're still doing some calculations. We've got to determine what the loads are to determine whether or not it warrants natural gas versus diesel. So that's something that we're still working through. That'll be something that the electrical engineers will be handling as we get further into the project. Ideally, we want to stay natural gas. It's just an easier option for us. We don't have to deal with refueling of the diesel. We don't have to deal with setbacks from the building as it relates to diesel storage tanks and so on and so forth. So that's our goal, is to stay natural gas, but we're still evaluating.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Awesome.
All right, great,
Thanks, Greg.
thanks.
I'd like to bring the construction managers in here just so they can do that. And then I want to make sure that we are sharing the screen so that everybody remotely can see what's going on.
Good.
'Cause I don't think they saw the last thing. Anybody who was remote? Is that what you want?
Yeah, start with that.
All right.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Mark Bushhouse from Williams Architects, principal in charge of the project. With me tonight is Mark Rohde, senior project manager, working with us on the job. Very excited to be here and go over the facility with you. As Mark and Kurt and others have talked about, a lot of work has been going into this, and we believe we're at a great point to come back and review the design with you and where we are and next steps. So that's all been explained nicely. So we'll go through that. Any questions you have, feel free to interrupt at any time. And while this is schematic, that means we basically have things where we think they're going to have to be and where we've reviewed the basic building materials, and we have a lot of those selected. We also have some exterior looks for the building that we'd like you folks to weigh in on tonight and give us some direction. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems have been basically figured out and priced by Camosi. And certainly as we get your feedback and continue working, as we get into more detail, we'll work with your staff, who's been doing a great job with us, really diving into this. And certainly as we continue to refine the design, we'll continue to work with everybody on the team to always look for making sure quality stays there, durability stays there, and always look for ways to spend less. And, do we actually have to have this, and do we have to have that? So all things we want to do. So you've had Kurt and Pete talk about the basic site plan from the civil point of view. I wanted to go over and give you a little orientation here. So now, south here, this is all cut at the base here, coming in over the railroad tracks. The building has 4 basic zones to it. On the west, we've got a 2 drive aisle garage for parking the vehicles and equipment inside. The southeast corner is the administration and common areas to support the facility. In the middle here on the east side are all the shops for the various departments and groups that work and do their various jobs. The northeast corner, this is the fleet maintenance and wash bay area. So we'll, as I get into the plan in more detail, we'll kind of zoom in and talk about each of these. But some overalls here, just to kind of help you think this through with us. Structurally, the basic rectangle of the garage area and the fleet maintenance, these are precast concrete walls, very cost efficient. In fact, you've got some folks that are frankly across the street, so that's about as good as it gets. Roofs, basic steel construction, low slope roofs, well insulated, all the things that are required per today's energy codes. On the east side where the offices and shops are, we're going to do maybe some different construction type, more typical standard things, because in this area the precast panels just are not cost efficient because they're not repetitive and big. So we'll use a basic, more standard construction systems with metal stud or concrete block walls, and on the outside of it we'll show some options for brick or panels. So that's kind of the basics there. I'll talk a moment about, plumbing systems, all the normal quality plumbing. The building will be fire suppressed throughout to control that issue as required. Heating and cooling systems are, the big garage does not have any cooling, it just has enough heat in it to temper it. The fleet areas, heat only again, but more heat so they can actually work in the wintertime when it's cold. Maybe heat the floors as well, if we can afford it. And then the shop areas and the administration and common zones, those are going to be heated and cooled. We're going to have equipment and air handlers that are going to sit on a mezzanine that overlooks the big garage area. We have found with our engineers that's an economical way to buy the equipment. You put it on the mezzanines. Doesn't take up expensive floor space, but since it is inside, it's protected from the elements and very easy to maintain for staff and others to come in and work on it because they're not climbing on the roof on days like we've had the last few weeks. These systems are highly energy efficient. I mean, there are certainly more expensive systems than this, but we really looked at and worked with staff on what are ones that are going to be durable, efficient, and really not cost more than we really have to spend to get something that'll last a good long bunch of years here, of decades worth of time. So these systems our engineers have indicated and we have seen have proven to be, have very, very long lives, be very efficient, and frankly easy to maintain. So you buy parts instead of buying the whole thing in the years to come. All good things. All right, now if I can find the next sheet here. Do I have to stop sharing and share again and get the next sheet up? No? All right, well. Sure. That was way too easy. Thanks for that little arrow. Okay. All right. The building's been rotated 90 degrees to have it fit on the sheet better, but this is that large garage zone. It has 2 drive aisles. These have all been set up in dimension to hold the equipment you have. So we have a chart showing every vehicle your department has, how big they are. And we've worked with EEI to check turning radiuses. So we've got basically one-way aisles that flow through one way, then flow through the other. And these various are parking spaces that are all sized to hold the equipment and vehicles that are going to be there. And of course, the drive aisles are sized to allow the turning radiuses to work in the overhead doors. So good, efficient building. They'll bring your equipment inside, very important for their longevity. Also helps get the snow and ice off the plows and stuff in the wintertime so that they can melt off and be ready to go the next day. And this layout's proven to have been very effective and cost effective on square footage. It keeps your people working nice and efficiently so they don't have to spend all their time, Jerry, moving equipment around to get one item out to get the next item out, and it really helps them work their day quickly. All right, and then here, like I said, this area on the lower left, this is the administration and common areas. We have an administration zone here with an entry door off the visitor parking lot. They can come in, have reception, waiting area, back to the offices, common shared bathrooms, conference rooms, copy areas. And then going to the north here, we have a split room that can be just a kitchen with a large eating area for staff to come in, snow events, all the people can come in and catch up on what's going on. But we can also subdivide this off to allow separate training areas and events and, HR training, et cetera, that's so important for departments nowadays. And at the corner here, we have a modest wellness area with some workout equipment to help keep the workers here and others fit. And then we have a locker room area. The approach nowadays with locker rooms and bathrooms is not to have a male and female locker room because the ratios between male and female keep changing, and that's a problem. And folks like privacy, and the ways the government's moving on their regulations. We are seeing the rules constantly in motion right now, and we believe the way to stay ahead of gender neutrality issues is to provide unisex locker zones and then individual toilet and shower rooms. So that means every employee has a locker, they're all in one zone. They know how many employees they're gonna have, so that's the number you have. You don't have to add 10 or 20 more to account for shifts between locker rooms. And then we have enough of these changing in bathrooms to allow folks to come in and close the door, take their shower, use the facilities as they need to. And this has proven to be really effective in creating good morale, and folks just really like these. We've been doing these on police, fire stations, rec centers, Carpentersville Public Works. We did this, all been very well received.
I don't mean to trip you up here, but is it possible to zoom in a little bit while you're?
Yeah, I'd like to. Let's see if I can do that.
It's underneath the green area where it says your screen sharing.
Well, or you can just control scroll.
Yeah, I don't have a scroll button. Yeah,
that makes it hard.
Yeah.
You can move that whole panel. You don't have to stop sharing. Just move that whole panel over. Drag it.
This thing?
Yeah. You can put it on the bottom too if you want.
Other way?
Oh, there's the scale thing right there, just barely showing.
Just drag it to the bottom of the screen.
All right.
Middle of the screen?
There you go.
All right. Oh,
All right.
thank you.
Oh, look at that.
Is it a touch screen or no?
That's really helpful.
It is
Thank
not.
you.
I guess I'll
It's
use
not.
arrows. Thank you very much for that. That's
Yeah,
helped.
no
It's kind
problem.
of squished.
I mean, I believed what you were saying. but
Yes.
Now I get to see it.
Now you can see it. Now you know what we're talking
Oh,
about. You can go,
discover.
ah, that was what
Yeah.
he's talking about. Sorry. Make
Sorry.
it hard for you to get it. That's it. All right.
So then, if you want.
Yeah, you can scroll that around. Okay, thanks.
Fine.
All right. So again, back to, this is the front door area from the parking lot, waiting lobby area, reception zone when needed, file storage, individual bathrooms, computers, offices, meeting room, sort of in this admin area. And then down this train corridor, you can also go to the right, and this is that lunchroom with a subdividable training area, so they can do meetings and do lunches or open it up for larger events. And then behind there is, like I said, a modest wellness center with its own bathroom and shower and changing area, some vending areas, and then here's that unisex lockers with the adjoining bathroom and showers. And then this zone here is a mudroom, again, very important in public works. People come back from the field having really done some difficult and muddy things, especially at this time of year with a water main break. And they can come in and wash things off and hang things up and change and clean up with showers right there, so a good system.
Where's the staff entrance?
Staff entrance is, they can enter the front door here, and there are doors into each of the shops. So they can come from the visitor, their parking areas out front here and get into each of their shops. And then also, as we get up here to the fleet zone, they also have parking adjacent to it, and they have doors they can get in as well. So they don't have to come in just one door. if they
Yeah, I
don't
was just thinking flow for when a crew's out in a water main break and coming back full of mud, full of
Right.
everything. They're,
Yeah, they would probably be actually pulling into the bay, park their vehicles right behind their shops, get out right there, and then go clean up.
Perfect, thank you.
Very good question. Okay. So, like I said, any questions on the common areas I described or the administration? I can slide back over if you would like.
Those are just 2 shower areas?
No, in talking about how to keep staff working as efficiently as possible, there are 2 right by the locker rooms, and then we have a couple other ones actually in this area between 2 of the shops, and then down here between the other 2 shops. The goal is, since a lot of them come in and out directly from their shops, to make them all walk down and take a shower and come back. That seemed like, again, wasting footsteps. Let's try to put the facilities closer to where they work so that it helps them be more time efficient.
Question back to the vestibule,
Sure.
the public access area. Is there no security measure doorstop from the waiting area back to the corridor that would lead back to the locker room?
Yeah, there's a set of doors here, if you can see them in this hallway, just past the bathrooms that will lock and contain people, plus the doors here are locked into the admin. The goal being, if you have a training situation going on, folks can come in and wait and talk to each other, use the 2 bathrooms.
Perfect, thank you.
Good question, very good.
How many drainage drains do you have where all the trucks go?
Actually,
the
they're very
floor.
long trench drains, they're very linear, they run right down the middle of the aisle, and the floor is gently sloped to them.
Yep.
So there's 2 very long ones.
Fine.
Good question. All right, moving on to the shop areas, they're the 4 shops, forestry, and, water and facilities, et cetera. 2 of them are noticeably larger because of the equipment and projects they work on, but each of them has a overhead door right out to the garage area where their vehicles can park, and they can get out there quickly. Like I talked about, there are these shared bathroom and showers between each of the 2. Each one has a modest office, a desk area for staff to use computers as they would need to inventory and purchase things. Then each one will have its own mix of shelving, workbenches, open work areas, et cetera, for them to do whatever the tasks that are normal for their crews to be working on. And then you see a dotted line kind of running across here. That means there's a mezzanine above this side of it for items they can store more out of the way. Again, mezzanine storage is much cheaper than on the main level, so by providing mezzanine, it helps them do that. The mezzanine also extends out into the garage area a good distance. You see this dotted line running along here. That's all from there. Actually, from there to there is all mezzanine. So each shop can use a storage area that's locked off for them. And then there's a large shared mezzanine. That's also where the heating and cooling units are going to be located. But this is also just general village storage. So all your holiday decorations, all the things that they have to store and release, paperwork that they handle for everybody. It's a great mezzanine for that. There's also a freight elevator that goes to it. One, handicap requirements make us put it in, but also good to have a freight elevator so they can move things up and down and make full use of the mezzanine.
Where's your access point for the mezzanine? Is it where it
Mezzanine has
says?
a stair on the left, and
Okay.
it's not shown, we're still refining the exact, and then on the far right. And then within each shop, they're gonna have a ladder to get them up to their section of the mezzanine. So at each end.
Mark, what sort of equipment would you store up there? And do you need, I see on one end you've got an elevator access but if you're bringing up whatever you're bringing up, if it's large enough, are you gonna have a difficult time getting it out of the elevator and getting it across to where you need it?
So one of the other things that's neat about this is what we're gonna have is cutaway sections with railings, so we'll be able to utilize our forklift. And then we've got a rolling
Okay.
pallet jack that we'll place on that second floor mezzanine. So essentially, we can put those large items up, and then we can use our pallet jack to then move them to the different areas that we need them.
What is the maximum weight that mezzanine could support in say, the size of a pallet?
It's rated for heavy storage, so it's going to be around 200 pounds a square foot, so it's
Okay.
serious weight storage.
Thank you.
Is there any more questions on the shop zones? If not, I'll move over to the fleet repair, maintenance area. And, can't let you look at that yet. Good for you. All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks. Thanks for all the help. Okay, this whole rectangle here is the fleet maintenance. There's an office for a couple of people to work. They have their own bathroom again, so they don't have to walk far with a shower. We have part storage that's locked off. We have a room that holds all the fluids, that's different oils, transmission, all the things that they are pumped overhead to reels that they use to pull down and fill for the vehicles. There are 2 drive-through bays that have different uses. The one on the right or in the middle of the building is for heavy-duty trucks. So we have a very large heavy-duty parallel pads that come out of the ground, rails that can lift at very heavy trucks. And then here, these are representative of 4 mobile lifts. They actually roll around anywhere you want, and you pick things up, and they all talk to each other, so it keeps everything level. And you can pick up all kinds of different things with those, or move them out of the way and have a nice big zone of the floor to work on it. This quadrant is used significantly for tires and welding and work like that. This lower left area this is more of a vehicle pickup trucks, so working on the police vehicles and other cars and SUVs would go in this area. This whole zone up to this wall, this whole area here, actually has a big crane above it that just rolls back and forth with a trolley that goes back and forth. There's also a mezzanine above this office zone here, so again, they can store things up on top. And this crane is going to allow them to lift the back of the dump, so right out of the trucks and work on things with much more efficiency than they do now, as opposed to, rolling around hand jacks and hydraulics and trying to make things move. So this crane is going to be able to just pick things up and move them around and work. They're going to be able to have multiple vehicles at once, just dramatically improvements over what they have now. Again, accessible from both ends, so they can have multiple vehicles coming and going and working on different projects. And on the far right of the screen, you see a long room here. This is the wash bay. It's long enough to wash 2 vehicles at once. On each side, there's these fiberglass catwalks. Again, they're fiberglass because there's a lot of salt spray happening in a wash bay. They're designed not to rust and corrode. They'll have high-pressure washers that they can use that, connected to pumps and heaters. And they're going to have a high-velocity hose as well to really clean the vehicles out well and clean them out quickly, let them drip off, and then pull back inside and park for the night. So this is a real dramatic improvement over what they're trying to do now. They spray water, and they just can't get the work done like this. And then this dotted line down the middle, again, a very long, big trench drain. It'll have a big settling basin to catch all the grime and soot and sand and dirt and chunks that fall off trucks to hold all of that.
I have a question. This
Sure.
this is for our Public Works Director. Mark, are we doing the outfitting and for all of our police vehicles and stuff? Or, I know it used to be in-house, is it now out-of-house?
Correct.
With this new facility, are we thinking about bringing it back in-house? Or is it a personnel issue where we don't have the people to do it?
That's something that the chief and I haven't discussed yet. As far as and when you say outfitting, you're talking about the radar units, computers. and so on.
Yeah, all that stuff.
It's become kind of a niched craft, if you will. I mean, there's definitely a potential for us to bring it back in-house. Again, not something that I believe the chief and I have talked about, but this facility would certainly present that as an option to do that in the future.
Is 12-foot wide enough in the wash bay at the one end? The one end's 14, the other one's 12. Is that wide enough for all our trucks, Mark?
Very good question. Frankly, that's been coming up the last couple of weeks. We've been confirming with their vehicles. The trucks fit fine, but as we've trying to save money on shrinking things, but on the other hand, look at all the issues, talking with Mark and his team, they have 12-foot blades on their vehicles, which is pretty common and so Are they always going to have them angled? Are they going to come in straight sometimes? So right now, we are seriously considering opening things up a bit there to make that work. So you're right there.
And that's a perfect example of, you know, the benefits of being in schematic design, where we're still working through those things and putting them on paper and getting that look. And just as you mentioned, Denny, that was something last week that we brought kind of and said, yeah, maybe we're getting a little too tight here, because we actually shrunk that space again.
Right.
With the mindset of trying to save some money, but at what cost, so.
Right. Anything else I can answer on the floor plan? We're going to switch to the exterior when you're ready. Okay. We've come up with 3 exteriors to look at. Thank you. They're all the same basic design. It really isn't a matter of, you know, something's greatly different. We're really talking about sort of the look and materials. There are pros and cons to the various materials we're going to look at. And if possible, if you folks reach a comfort level, one of the designs over the others, that would help the team to move forward with that look, with the other input that you could give us as we want to further refine this. So, how come you're not moving? Yeah, it didn't do it right away there, but it's coming now. There you go. Now, then it froze on you. Come on, come on, come on. All right. This is option 1. I'll focus on one initially. This is from the southeast corner looking northwest. You'll see the large garage area up here on the upper left corner, the 2 main garage doors that would come and go with vehicles coming in and out of them. The precast panels, we're looking to put some clear story windows around the top in certain select areas. We do that because we're trying to reduce the number of skylights that we have to have while still getting good light in. None of us want to use more skylights than we have to. However, Illinois energy codes absolutely require big rooms to have skylights once you get certain sizes. So we're simply trying to manage how many we have to have by bringing light in around the edges. So this is all just precast concrete. We'll put some grooves in it, paint it nicely. Here's the administrative side of the building. This basic look we're calling sort of our brick look. So what you'll see on the right side there is the nice overhang when you come into the building. You see the lobby area glassed in here on the sort of in the right. My arrow's not showing up very well. And then the long stretch of offices with some brick around it. Okay. And then moving to a different look here, different angle of view. This is more from the west looking back, you know, from the east looking back west. On the lower left zone, you see the entry area, some glass to the right of that where the training room is, and beyond that, more glass and combined with the wellness area. You see a setback notch. This is where the shops are. Each of the shops will have a bit of a window looking outside. We have some clear story glass in the wall that gets daylight into the shops. And then again, you see that little strip of glass near the roof, a clear story letting light into the main garage area. On the right, you can see the rectangle of the fleet repair area. That also has to be quite tall, because again, we have a crane up there that's got to be able to lift the dumps out of the trucks themselves and move things around. So we have some important clearances we have to work with. And a bit of glass at the corner. So in this scheme, we've tried to use brick in more places. There are some areas where we have some either metal or cement panel zones that are silvery looking or gray looking in this image. We thought this was one that had a bit of a warmer look with some normal face brick around it. And we minimized the amount of other panels that we had to use, hoping to, again, have it be something that just a little warmer looking. We also, in our experience in talking with Camozzi, the construction manager, cost-wise, we think the brick is very competitive with the other panels. And frankly, you know, I'm old enough to have seen a lot of brick buildings last a lot of years with really nothing you had to do to it during all those decades. So I'll just say for myself personally, as an experienced architect, I really like brick because it just works a long time. And the precast panels as well. We put some good silicone paints on those, and they go decades before you really have to do much work on those. So we call that the brick approach one. A couple more quick views of that as well. This is directly west, looking directly, on the east, looking directly west. Again, you see the office area on the left, the shops in the middle, garage areas on the right. All right, so moving down, going to look at option 2, we call it. Still trying to get past the pages here. They hang up on me, my apologies. So we call this as option 2. We're really using a lot less brick, and we're using more fiber cement panels. These are rectangular shaped panels made out of a mixture of actual cement and some fibers. They cast them in whatever shape you want and colors you want. Again, very durable, long-term material. But by using that material instead of the brick, we find that the buildings have more of a sleeker, more modern look. So here, again, we could adjust the colors of those panels a bit. We're still bringing in some pieces, some aspects of brick, on the big garage areas, also some between the windows and the office zone. And then as we would look at the whole building here, from the southeast looking northwest, again, we're still bringing some brick in between some of the window areas, the corner up and further north up at the fleet area, some brick at that corner. But as you can tell, we've pushed the design to reduce the brick and increase the number of panels that we're using. Again, we think it looks like a more modern building, a little less brick, a little less warm, but you know, in some places, some clients really like a more sleeker look to their project. And we're going to move down and see again more of a ground angle view looking at this option. Upper picture is from the east, again looking directly west with the admin entry and common areas, shops straight ahead, and the fleet maintenance on the right. Again, another sort of angle view where you're looking sort of right at the main entrance here with glass to the training and wellness area and the fleet area in the background. So again, we've reduced some of the brick, increased some of the panel look. Now, option 3. In option 3, now we've gone even further, and we have further reduced the amount of brick. Frankly, I don't know if there's really much of any brick left. Sorry, I'm trying to get the right picture here for everything. All right. So in this one, there's even less brick and more metal panel. And instead of the cement panels have a rougher texture, the metals are sort of smooth and slick looking. So the third one, we're thinking maybe we're going to use more metal panels. So now the building has sort of a smoother look to it, more metal in the areas that are not precast. Again, just kind of pushes the building a bit more in the modern direction. Again, these are all products that are designed to last for decades outside. Nothing here is wildly expensive, and nothing here is short term. If I can get to the last one of that. Can't switch between pages with the arrows. I got to do it manually, so my apologies. So again, looking from being in the east and looking directly west with this concept 3, you now can see there really isn't much in the way of brick. It's really panel systems, metal, sort of sleek looking with the glass and the overhangs. So these are 3 options. We believe they're all working within your budgets. They're all durable materials, mid-range. So we just thought we'd put this out there, and as your architect, give you some ideas and see if one is more appealing to you than the others.
Of the 3 options, and I'll ask the question, which seems to be the most cost-effective?
I think cost-wise, they're all in the same ballpark. To say there's one higher than the other, maybe when Camosi comes on later, they could tell you if one tips more the other. I'll just say from our perspective, having had a lot of success with brick over the years, my personal suggestion would be to look at the brick one closely and see if you like it, because I think cost-wise it'll come in well, and I think you'll find that you simply have less coating and reworking issues in the decades to come.
Thank you.
If I could jump in for a minute, as staff, as when we evaluated the 3 options, kind of going along with what Mark has stated, we prefer option 1, the brick option as well, mostly related to the durability factor. Anytime you start attaching fiber cement, materials and metal materials. Obviously, there's defects, there's UV rays, there's different things that come into effect over the longevity of the product. Brick is brick. It holds up well, it's very durable. And honestly, that's been kind of one of our mantras throughout this project is using materials that are going to be durable. As Public Works, we spend a lot of our time out in the field addressing, infrastructure and different things. The last thing we want to do is spend extra time dealing with keeping a building up and running. So durability has been one of our kind of key things, as Mark talked about, reducing the amount of skylights and roof penetration so we don't have as many potentials for, roof leaks as the facility starts to age. Those are the things that we're really trying to strive to look towards, is minimizing the maintenance. And I know that's contradictory to a department that does maintenance, but that's kind of the objective, is we see the way that things work and we see the way that things function, and now we have the opportunity to build something to take that off of our plate so we can focus on the other tasks at hand. So I think I can speak for Jeff and Justin and myself. We staff prefers the option number one, but as Mark stated, all three are great options. I think they bring a great look. But, again, we'd be happy to get some feedback from some of the board members.
I'll tell you that option 1 was my favorite. Option 3 was my least favorite, just based upon the aesthetics. So,
I'm concerned that there's a real lot of glass around that community area, along with the whole lobby area. That's a lot of glass. That's a lot of glass cleaning every week that we're gonna be paying for.
That's something that we evaluated and we looked at, and we're still looking at in this process. The energy and lighting codes reflect some of that, where glass is needed in order to obtain that, but that's been a concern throughout the project. Surprisingly, we've actually reduced some of the glass. I know it's hard to believe, but we've cut back a little bit. So again, something that we're still working on, and good feedback to have.
I would just say that the areas that have the biggest glass, other than the front entry lobby, which a front entry lobby having a lot of glass is not a terribly unusual thing. It can be a positive for how folks enjoy the building. But the bigger glassy areas in the common zone, one is the lunchroom and one is the wellness center. And these are fairly deep rooms, and there's no glass on the sides. So we're trying to get enough light on this side so the light can penetrate deep enough into it. So as these folks are coming in to work out or have their lunch and be together, that it's still, good daylighting opportunities. But like Mark said, we've already reduced the light glass in some other areas substantially, all good ideas. And you hit it right on the head. We're talking about this glass right now.
Excellent. Any other questions? I had a couple, if you have a second. And I can appreciate the position that you're in presenting your design to us, and so I don't intend to, offend you, but I did have some questions on things. So I'm sure you put some thought into the idea of having a mezzanine. I know we had a need for storage. I was always under the impression that having a mezzanine or a second floor was more expensive than putting storage on the first floor. Is that?
No, it's actually the other way around. The mezzanine storage areas usually cost about half per square foot.
No kidding.
Floor area zone.
Perfect.
Because you've already bought the roof, you bought a lot of things, so just to slip that slab in there.
But that includes the extra cost for having the elevator?
The elevator probably tips it a little bit, but this is a big enough mezzanine where the cost per square foot is not really pushed that much by the elevator. And then the fact that, frankly, if you make the building larger and larger, now they have to go farther and farther to get things. So if that storage area was somewhere else, now they have to take their time to go that much further. So there are some paybacks there. And the building itself, again, we get this roof high enough to slope correctly for drainage, get the big vehicles in there. And when we meet the rest of the building, we have enough volume built up where without changing the shell of the building, we can slide that mezzanine in at a very good cost.
And as you can see on the site plan too, obviously space becomes an issue with this particular site. So minimizing our square footage length and width wise and going vertically is definitely a benefit as well.
Cool. The second question I had is the canopies that kind of stick out. And it's hard to tell from this exactly how far they stick out, but they look to be pretty substantial on the east face of the building. What's the thought, or is that just a design feature, or what's the impact?
Probably a combination of the two. That overhang is very helpful, of course, during inclement weather. People coming and going from the building, they have a zone where they're covered. Since this is a building that has a training room in it, we're anticipating at times there'll be a fair number of people showing up to do a training session. And the option of that overhang is, as they're gathering to come in, if the door is not unlocked, again, if the door is locked, at least they're still covered. And if they want to step outside and talk on a nicer day, you know, from a training session, there's a place to do that. We also find that overhangs like that really help people find a door. We don't want, you know, it's always good to know the front doors on a building, and these kinds of things help do that. So, yeah, we think it looks nice, but we think it does a few practical things as well.
Mike, to clarify, and I'm not sure if that's where you were speaking of, I'm thinking about in this east perspective elevation, not the main entrance.
Oh, right, over
The ones over each of the shops. To
Right.
me, to your point, that overhang
Yeah.
makes that look like an entry point. And really, the entry point is all the way to the left.
That'll be gated off.
Yeah, it will be gated, so you can't get in front of the shops unless you've gone through the gate. So at least you're stopped. The overhangs just to the east of the shops is based on a couple things. One, we do need to be able to allow people to get from the administrative common area up to the fleet zone and to each of the shops. And we need to have that flow. And on many facilities, they actually, you know, in a lot of places, you build a corridor that takes you inside that whole distance. In talking with Mark and having him kind of talk about the culture, the ability to get outside sometimes, they said, you know what, would it be cheaper if we got rid of that corridor and just put a little roof over it so we can get outside, get some air, go see the fleet people, stop into the shops, talk. We can all work together, but we can get outside a moment when the weather's better. He said, yeah, the overhang's a little overhang's a lot cheaper than building a hallway. And they still have the ability to go into the garage, and they can walk down the garage and then back in if they want to do that. So if the weather is that bad, they still have an indoor route to make that work. So that was the idea behind that little covered walkway that goes from the office common area up to the fleet zone.
Yeah, the gate is to that.
Yeah.
Grass.
And the gate prevents people from getting in front of the shops unless you're an employee, right?
So the gate's going to run all the way up to the edge of the building?
Yeah, there'll be a
It's gonna be a fence.
A fence, okay, all the way up to the edge of the building. Okay.
Good question.
Cool. Just the last question, it should be a softball question for Pete or for Kurt. The site landscaping, the basin that we have, I mean, I'm assuming that basin's going to be a native basin, just like we've required everybody else to build in town, so that we're going to comply with our own regs in that regard, right?
Absolutely, it'd be 100% in compliance with the King County Stormwater Ordinance
Okay,
and our ordinance requiring native landscaping.
sounds good. That's all I had. Anybody else? Denny? Dan? You want to come out of retirement?
No.
Anybody
You
else?
wanted to
have any-
make sure the mic was on for that one.
Yeah. Tom, Doug, anything?
Is there a consensus on option 1, 2, or 3? One.
One.
Happy smile, I'm smiling, you can't see it, but I'm very happy right now, thank you. Any other questions that I could answer for you this evening? I know Camosi is going to come up and talk about their budgeting work, and the good news is the dollars that we put to this back in the planning last summer are holding, so we're in the same dollar range we've always been in. In fact, maybe doing a little better, so some things are looking positive, but good team. So anything else I can answer anytime.
I have one other question. You mentioned the pitch of the roof.
Yes.
So I work for a manage a manufacturing facility with a flat roof.
Okay.
And it's absolutely atrocious 50 years later. So this will be pitched enough that we're going to avoid the downfalls and the pitfalls of those.
Well, yes, yeah. The low slope manufacturers recommend about 1/4 inch of drop per every foot. So we're actually going to slope the whole structure down to the center support beam. So it all just goes in, then we'll put a series of roof drains plus overflows. We're required to not only catch the water at the lower level, but have intakes that are like 6 inches higher. So if those main ones get clogged, the water gets higher, it flows into the other drains. And then we take that water and we dump it where employees walk in and out, so they get really mad. And they yell at the architect in their mind, who did this to me? This is spraying water. I'm angry. So what do? They call somebody up and say, it's spraying water out here. I never used to do that. This is awful. I'm angry. So what do? They go look on the roof and go, oh my gosh, our roof drains are all clogged. So a little trick we learned over the years. Made people mad at the architect, something good.
Just run it right into the showers. I'm an environmentalist.
Yeah, rainwater showers, there you go. Good question, though, yes. Anything else we can answer for you?
No, I've got one comment, it's more for the board, is back in August of 2019, we had discussed through this project honoring late trustee Pete Hines, and I just want to remind everybody that we had talked about that, and perhaps a plaque somewhere inside the building honoring Pete.
I thought it'd be a good idea, because Pete put a lot into it, maybe like where all the big room where everybody goes in for meetings and that, something like
Yeah,
that.
the training room or the community
Right.
room, something like that
Yeah.
would be
Yeah,
appropriate.
put a plaque on the outside of that, yeah.
Nice.
That's good.
Okay.
All right, I think if I'm done, then I'll step away, and I think next up will be some folks from Canopy talking about.
I'll let Jeff work his magic here and
Yeah,
get the
we'll
screens
see.
moved around.
All right, now, I am going. All right. You should be able to share your screen now. If you guys want to introduce yourselves to the board?
Yeah, we will. Thank you. Can everyone hear us?
Yes.
Good to go. I'm Tyler, deal with Camozzi, here with John Camozzi. Todd Perone, another member of our team here who's helped put together this budget, couldn't be here tonight. So you get John and I. Lucky you guys. What we're going to do is we're going to share our screen and bring up the budget recap for this conceptual budget we put together. I believe that we were able to send down some booklets for you guys. I hope everyone saw that, was able to go through it. What we're gonna do, I'd like to pull up the recap for that. I know there's a lot more information in this book in terms of the drawings that Williams provided at the time we did this, and some takeoff drawings for us to kind of show you what we did to come up with some figures that we did for this budget, and then the actual general sheet. I don't think we want to spend the time to go through that line by line. I'm more than willing to do that if that's what everyone wants to do, but I think just hitting the line items on the recap would be the best thing to do. And feel free while we're going through this to interrupt me and ask any questions you may have. But with that being said, I'll pull that up and we'll get going. Okay, so what we're looking at here is our standard recap that we use when we put together budgets. What this is kind of a line-by-line item that combines all of the multiple line items on our general sheet and condenses them down into one line item, mostly by discipline. We do this for multiple reasons. One, it's a lot easier for situations like this for us to go through and show you what the dollar amounts are for that. And two, moving forward as we do another budget, and then once we get to our bid day budgets and the bid packages, this line item will be there for reference for us to go off of as we update our budgets. Because what you just saw from Williams here, you know, there's been some minor tweaks in terms of a little less glazing, configuration of the main entrance area, things like that. Things change like that throughout this schematic design, but we want to give you a number to show you where you're at. So next time we meet and show you our next budget, it'll show you the cost difference between this budget. So you'll have that every day moving forward, and we'll be able to give you another book like that that shows that and breaks that down. So just so you know, that's kind of why we do this. Starting at the top, we've got our general conditions and pre-construction phase fees. These were all things that were outlined within the RFP process, I believe, when you guys conducted interviews with CMs. The general conditions include the stuff such as dumpsters, toilets, a job site trailer, a little bit of progress cleaning. Pre-construction phase fees are something like, putting together budgets, pre-construction stuff such as that. But again, these are all line items broken down during your RFP process. None of that has changed. Supplementary conditions here, that's things such as, extra dumpsters and progress cleaning and things of that will be put in multiple bid packages that each contractor will have to abide by when they bid. So that's what that line item is. And we'll go through here. You see your earthwork and site utilities, your asphalt paving, site concrete, that's kind of self-explanatory. It's all your exterior work there, site concrete being your sidewalks, your curb and gutter, your aprons, things of that nature. Then you've got your fencing and gates, whether it be around the area or the automatic gates you're going to have on either side, the west and east side of the building for the vehicles to get back there. You've got your building concrete, precast concrete. I know Mark Bushhouse went over what portions of the building are going to be precast. You're also going to have some precast plank area that supports that mezzanine. Then you get into your masonry structural steel. Again, that's all kind of self-explanatory. I'm glad to hear you guys picked option number 1. Most of our numbers here include, for this masonry, option 1, there's going to be a little more brick that's added because we figured some metal panel, cement board at the administration area when we had first gone through this. So that obviously will change next go around when we update our budgets and get a little further on with this schematic design. You've got your rough and finished carpentry, that'd be your millwork, your countertops, cabinets, your blocking, sheathing for any of your miscellaneous specialties, toilet accessories, projectors, TV brackets, anything of that nature. You got your roofing, sealants and fire stopping, doors, frames and hardwares, and your overhead door. That's pretty self-explanatory. Your aluminum storefront, glass and glazing, that obviously is, like you guys said, there's a lot of it on the building. I believe that it has actually shrunk since we did this budget in terms of some of the sizing, so that's a good thing. Metal studs and drywall, that'd be a lot of your interior walls, specifically in the administration, multi-purpose wellness area. All of the interior walls at the streets, sewer, forestry maintenance, we have all that as painted CMU block. We understand that's going to take majority of the abuse, so putting drywall in there for upkeep is not something we want to do. You got your acoustical ceilings, that'd be your lay-in tiles. Floor coverings, that's a lot going on in there. You've got stuff from densified concrete to some sealed concrete, epoxy. There is no carpeting, I can promise you that. There's LVT flooring, nature, so that's lumped into a lot of different components. You got your painting and your miscellaneous specialties. That's stuff such as toilet accessories, fire extinguishers, TV brackets. I will let you know that I do already have one dedication plaque in there, so that bodes well for what I just heard you guys say. Your elevators, that'd be the elevator for the mezzanine area in the vehicle garage. And you've got your vehicle maintenance equipment. I know we've had some talks with Mark Wolf and his rep, Ron, about what we're going to be putting in there. And then we continue down to our MEP portion, your fire protection to sprinkle the building, your plumbing, HVAC, and electrical work. I know Todd Perrone, who couldn't be here with us tonight, he had some extensive conversations with some MEP contractors that we work with to get an idea of what we're looking at here for this project after getting a narrative from the MEP engineers that Williams has. So we feel good with that. The AV and security number is actually a really good number we got from what they're using right now at their existing facility in terms of their contractor there. So he was able to give us a nice round number for that. You see, we're holding an allowance for this railroad crossing work for the that's going to need to happen here. That's kind of a wild card because we don't know where we're at with that yet, but we feel confident with that dollar amount we've got in there. Carrying a testing number here, $50,000. That's to, do some soil testings, test concrete, steel, all that stuff while we're going through the building process. We didn't include any permit fees. We've got a winter protection number of $10,000 in there right now. That's gonna fluctuate depending on how quickly we can move with getting packages out when we need to start construction and get this building enclosed before winter. That $10,000 was also something that was part of the RFP during the interview process, so we held that. And then we've got the contingency in there, and our insurance, supervision, and fee, which was also part of that RFP interview, and then your bond premium. So that's what we consider what I'll say the construction costs. And right now, as you can see, we're sitting at just under 13.5 million. And then below the line here, we like to carry these. This would be your architect, consulting, engineering fees, civil fees. We're carrying an allowance of $125,000 for furniture inside the building. And we also included a number in here for what we would use as an alternate for that covered parking on the north end of the garage. So with all that being said, that brings you to your total project costs of $15.7. So does anyone have any questions in regards to what we just went through?
I have a question, if I may. On insurance, I'm assuming this is just going to be conventional insurance. This is not going to be an OSIP or CSIP or anything?
No, correct.
Okay.
That furniture number, is that the full F&E for the facility? So that's offices, chairs, everything? How many?
Yes, I believe.
How many offices?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, how many offices are we planning? That just seems, that I'm surprised, I thought that number would be a little bit higher, actually.
That's not for public works buildings, they don't need anywhere.
That's what I'm hoping, but okay, thank you.
Well, and what's the furniture fee that's down here at the bottom, the 125K? What's that?
That's the FF&E that I was talking about.
Oh,
Desks,
I thought I saw
chairs.
furniture somewhere else up, and there's not above the line either?
No,
Oh, okay.
but that includes also the wellness equipment? It does not.
So that does not. So one of the things that we went through, again, schematic design, great that we catch those things. We realized today that we did not have that included. There was a miscue between staff, Camozzi, Williams, between all of us on who's covering that. So our attack right now on the wellness center equipment, obviously COVID plays a big factor in this. We've already spoken to several reps from different companies. Our goal was to try to adhere some donations to try to get that equipment. Unfortunately, everybody we've talked to says in normal circumstances, absolutely, tax write-off for those different businesses, but because their sales are extremely down, they're not anticipating that ability. Keep in mind, though, that this building won't be finalized and complete until, roughly 1 year from the start of construction. So we're hoping that we'll have the opportunity to take advantage of some of that still, but nevertheless, we will be including into the next budget to make sure we account for that equipment.
So you plan for it in case we have to pay for it in full?
Correct. Another thing that wasn't available at the time, just so we're clear and transparent, there is relocation of a 12-inch raw water main that this budget doesn't reflect. We did not catch that it's going to be, need to be relocated. It comes in through the back of the property through Orchid Road. Currently feeds from our Well 3 facility. That unfortunately right now currently would be in the building. So obviously we need to make some offsets to move that water main. Rough costs for that are about $75,000 to $100,000. So again, as we get further along in the design and the site work, we'll identify these things. And then hopefully there'll also be savings we'll identify throughout the process too.
And this does not include the fiber optic, correct? That's not anywhere in here?
I
For the
don't
buildings to
believe,
communicate?
I don't believe it does. We're still trying to finalize that number with our IT consultant. Most of that cost is going to be the actual drilling and installation of the conduit. The fiber line itself, we've got costs on are pretty immaterial. But the long-term benefit of that is enormous. Being able to reduce and only have one server that will house the entire public works facility, as opposed to keeping 2 servers online is not a benefit right away, but long-term down the road is a huge benefit.
We've got, the big cost obviously is the concrete and steel, we're like 4 million. Any thoughts on what that number is gonna be? Is that fluctuation in that over the next year as we get into construction? Any chance we're gonna see any better numbers there on those items? I mean, everything else is relatively inconsequential when you look at those 2 pieces, obviously, of this facility.
I mean, I'm going to look to John and Tyler to answer that question, but my initial is going to be, I think you can throw the book out the window due to COVID. I think in normal circumstances, they'd feel pretty confident to give you an answer. But I don't know, but I'll let Tyler or John answer that.
Yeah, I mean, those are the big, where the economy is gonna be, you know, towards the end of this year, the fall, when bids on this, that'll be a big thing. Now, the market is such that it would be a great time to bid it. People are looking for work. As they said, COVID has impacted pretty much everybody's sales numbers, so everybody is actively looking for work right now. Actually, you know, wane a little bit and become less of an issue. We could see people getting busy and the prices start to reflect that. But as we speak right now, we're under budget almost every time we go out for bid. So it is somewhat of a crapshoot. Where we're going to be in August will tell a lot. But right now we're optimistic. Things at this moment are pretty good to bid.
Thank you.
Anything else that you haven't finished up on besides any other loose ends?
Not at this current point in time, but there's, you know, no guarantees that there aren't things that we haven't discovered yet or came upon. Again, it's amazing when you start looking through this process and going through this process and identifying everything down to the T, how many things are truly involved. But that's our objective. Both Director Van Voren, myself, Administrator Zoffel, that's our goal, is to come to the village board and make sure we have every cost that we can think of that's associated with the construction of this building implemented into the budget and implemented into those bonds, so there's no surprises.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that. I promise you there's a few things, whether they're small or not, that may not be included, but it's the same thing on the other. And there's probably other things that we've had to make some assumptions on that are included that won't be a part of this project. I can tell you from a conceptual budget standpoint, between the conversations we've had with Mark and Justin and the information that EEI and Williams and their engineers have provided, along with the drawings for a conceptual budget as early in the game as we are, is extremely impressive. We had a lot of information to work off of, and I think this budget reflects it. So I really like where we're at and the information that we've had, especially this early in the game.
If we take off the covered parking structure alternate, then we're really at 15 million then, right?
Correct, going off of this standpoint, yes.
And where was the covered parking structure?
So the covered parking would be on the north side of the garage area, would be where it would stand, so without,
It would be
there you go.
this blue area here.
Got it. Not the other blue area, or both?
No, this is a site drawing or concrete pavement. This is our takeoff software, and it's colored to represent the square footage of that is. This is just the first drawing I have available, and this blue line here, or box, represents that covered parking. This would be concrete paving that would be in that area.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we asked on our meeting that if all other equipment's inside, so there's nothing out there right now, and I think you said, Mark, you probably wouldn't use it for 5 years or more. So it's really something that may not even be used for 10 years, so that's a good way of saving $729,000.
Correct.
Well, you've also got to understand, in our budget, we've got $500,000 of contingency that, you know, if Well, not, it's not necessarily gonna be eaten up, but it's there for, oh yeah, we need to change this, we need to do that. If we're, as far, as we're, as organized as we are so far, that bodes well for not necessarily using all of the contingency, so.
Yeah. And that's the plan, is as we drill down into this project and we get farther along, we get into design development, we get into construction documents, that we're hoping that that contingency will start to drop off and taper a little bit as we get more calculated on everything that's going to go into this project.
All right, my last question, sorry. My last question, can you put up the other site plan that you just had?
Yep.
Thanks. So if you look down along the access to the south, so if you pan down a little bit further, well, I guess it doesn't really help. The railroad tracks that come across the entrance to this site, did I hear that those are not in use, or are you just talking about the crossing that crosses Alcott?
So there's two.
Go ahead, Mark.
So there's two different railroad crossings that are going to be part of a separate project that's being done by EEI. The first part of the railroad crossing will be the actual entrance point into the Public Works facility. We'll be installing that crossing at that point. The other one that was referenced by Kurt in his portion would be, there's a siding that then crosses Alcott Road further to the west. That siding is no longer being utilized. And actually, we were approached by the tenants or the property owners there originally when we did Alcott Road to have that removed. Since then, we've talked to BNSF and gotten more confirmation that it's probable that we can take that out. It impacts a lot of different things for a lot of different, mostly trucking companies, especially Old Dominion and anyone carrying hazardous materials that are, since that's still considered a live crossing, they have to stop every time at that crossing to follow their regulations. So we wanted to try and incorporate this as part of that project, and honestly, we kind of needed to creep that way anyway to accommodate the 3-lane section.
Gotcha. So but the main entrance to the site will have a railroad crossing to get in. How often is that used? Do you see that being an issue?
Kurt, I can probably, it's not very often used, so there's only one currently, and honestly, I don't know that it would be expanded much in the future either. But there's currently only one user, which is the paper products. I believe it's International Paper, who's next to us on the west. Their deliveries fluctuate, but I can tell you that not very often. I want to say they cross the siding 3 times a week right now. But again, that'll fluctuate as they get deliveries, but they never halt on that line either. It's a continuous flow, usually about no more than 10 or 12 cars. So even our wait time wouldn't be substantial if we're waiting to get into that section. Again, there'll be things that we'll have to implement with our staff. Obviously, if we're coming from the west trying to enter into the site and there's a train, then we may have to go down to the next entrance or the next street and then turn around and come back as we wait. But there should be enough room between the tracks and the approach for us to have a vehicle staged, so we're not blocking the roadway.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, that one railroad track is being used more and more. They get at least, like you said, probably not more than 14, but Illinois Industrial Lumber's using it, and
But they don't cross that siding. The only one that actually comes across where the Public Works will be International Paper. But you're correct, the rail traffic on the other side of Route 31 has increased.
They back that up all the way to the dead end. But the one, you're right, the one going into Lacone and that, every bus has to stop for that too, and you're just gonna get somebody hit you in the rear end all the time, and all the bus drivers don't like that either, because it's not there for anything.
Yep, it's an unwarranted stop, correct.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. So with that, obviously, take some time. That was a lot of information to digest at once. I want to thank Tyler and John, Mark and Mark from Williams and all their hard work on this project, Pete and Kurt and their hard work. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of fun so far, and we're still got a long ways to go. And We definitely appreciate your feedback. We value any questions the board has at any time. Please feel free to reach out to us. As talking to some of the trustees, you know, the more eyes on this project, the better. We're all human, we all make mistakes, and we all oversee some things on a project this caliber and this large. Definitely the more eyes, the better. So we value any information or any oversight you guys have. So if there's any questions, obviously you can let me know. Otherwise, that's all we have for this evening.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all, appreciate it. All right. So moving on into items for separate action this evening, we have item A and B we'll talk about together. Recommendation of the Plan Commission of PC 2021-003Z, the zoning map update, and then ordinance, item B is ordinance 1904, repealing and replacing our official zoning map. And this is first reading. Senior Planner Chipman.
All right, thank you very much. Before you this evening is the annual zoning map update. This is mandated by state statute. It is a little different though this year because we are incorporating the changes as proposed with the Unified Development Ordinance and taking the opportunity to move some of the parcels closer into accordance with the comprehensive plan. At last month's meeting, there were some residents that came in regards to the map, and they were also present at the first Plan Commission meeting in February. And as a result of that, we had a second special Plan Commission meeting, which was held last Thursday. We did make some changes to the zoning map based on their feedback, and we're proposing to leave those residents on North River Street as R2 residential, rather than moving them into the Mill District at this time. And the same is true of the, excuse me, same is true of the two parcels behind those residents. I spoke with the owner of that location. They are currently a B3. We're proposing to move those to a B2 at this point. We did not feel that it was, and as I mentioned, I spoke with the business owner as well, but we did not feel that it was appropriate to move them towards manufacturing, but rather to a B2 from their existing B3, because we're planning on doing away with the B3 district. With that, I'd ask if there are any questions about the proposed zoning map.
I'm assuming tons of parcels changed from, you know, R4 to R3 or whatever it is. Did anything else change from like manufacturing to residential or business to manufacturing? Any big land use type changes that we should be aware of?
Yes. In my first report to the Plan Commission, I outline a number of items. There are a few. So one, the first one was the apartments on Reading Drive were mislabeled R4 where they should have been R5, so that was corrected on the map at that time. Several automotive parcels located on Montgomery Road were updated from B1 to B2 as staff felt that did not move them into non-conforming, but kept them more in a conforming use. The residential part, there was one residential parcel on Sherman that was mislabeled as B1. It's right behind Pig Dog. I think that was just a mistake, and we've corrected that. There was a parcel at the northwest corner of South River Street and Clay Street that was labeled R2 when the rest of the block was proposed to be rezoned as Mill District. So we've altered that as well to kind of square off that block, excuse me.
But that's no longer going to be Mill District.
No, we're still proposing that parcel to be Mill District. That's on the southern end of town. That is not in the same location as the North River Street petitioners, or excuse me, or group of residents that came to the two meetings. the several parcels near the southeast corner of Orchard and Alcott Road were proposed to be B2 zoning in conformance with the comprehensive plan, but we're recommending that they remain in the manufacturing districts. So what that really encompasses is you have the gas station on the corner, Orchard Stop, and then just south of that is Newlywed Foods. So we're recommending that the Newlywed Foods building stay in M1. And then the parcels behind Newlywed Foods were also proposed to go to a business district, but they are largely floodplain properties, and we felt that they would allow for Newlywed Foods to be continuous with the manufacturing districts. So we're proposing to keep all of those as manufacturing. At the south of Walmart, there's a lot, and near the Oswego Fire Protection District building, there's quite a bit of vacant land, and the comprehensive plan shows that as being a different mixture of land uses. We're actually proposing that they stay the way they are for two reasons. One is that there are existing annexation agreements that talk about the zoning of those properties, and the other one is that there isn't really a grand planned layout for that area yet, so there will certainly be some zoning changes to come to those in the future. And then lastly, the commercial parcels at the southeast corner of US Route 30 and Gordon were proposed to be a B1, and staff is proposing that those parcels remain a B2 as they are located on a state highway.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's helpful. Anybody else have any questions?
Just a quick thing. I'm assuming item A is just the acceptance that the Plan Commission made a recommendation. Okay.
That is correct. We're hoping to move this forward in conjunction with the Unified Development Ordinance at the next meeting. So that is why the Unified Development Ordinance that was discussed at the last meeting and the Plan Commission recommendation, which was accepted at the last meeting, is on for discussion tonight rather than items for separate action.
Sounds great. All right, if there are no other questions on the zoning map,
So moved.
Second.
that's where I was going. So item A, that's on the recommendation of Plan Commission, PC 2021-003Z. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes?
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jared. And item B is the enacting ordinance 1904. This is first reading. Anyone opposed to putting that on consent?
No.
All right. All right, moving on to item C this evening is ordinance 1905, amending various provisions of the village code regarding alcoholic beverages. This is waiver of first passage on the second. And then we'll discuss, I think at the same time, item D, which is ordinance 1906, amending the village code. I think that same section for Gray's Mill Estate, waiver of first passage on the second. Attorney Julian.
Correct. Thank you. So as we discussed at the last meeting, we were directed to take into account the needs of the Gray's Mill Estate and their liquor license request and to formulate a new license that would meet their needs. So what you see before you this evening is a new class liquor license, which is an event venue license, and which it really takes a couple of components and combines it into a single license. So the three main components are, the first element is the sale service element, which is a combined either event venue function such as a wedding or some other type of event of that nature, or when it's not being used for that purpose as a bar or restaurant that would be open to the public. So that would just be your general, somebody comes in, and is served alcohol or is attending that wedding reception or other sort of, bridal shower event of that nature and is served liquor. The second component would be a special event such as the St. Patrick's Day Festival or some other community-wide event which would expand outside of the normal footprint of the service area. So for a special event, you're using their current facilities, where you wouldn't really see a difference, whereas the special event might be something of a larger magnitude. They might be utilizing an outdoor tent or something, a little bit grander. than a typical, just a typical business day.
But still on their property.
Still on their property, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but it just would be a little bit outside of, the indoor
normal.
building or their beer garden. It would just be something a little bit, greater magnitude open to the public. Maybe part of the Montgomery Fest or something else where they want to utilize the parking area or something a little broader. The special event component does require that at the annual renewal, they issue the village a list of the events that they plan on having for the year. And the intent isn't for that to be set in stone, but rather to kind of start the conversation, where the village can determine whether or not additional resources would be needed if they foresee any problems with parking, to really, head those issues off. When they renewed that, that would be presented to the village and then, could be amended as the year goes on if need be.
Question?
Yes.
I'm still a little bit unclear on that. So that were to come to pass and then say October of next year, they give us a list of here's the 17 events we want to run. Does the board or the staff have the ability to line that out? Okay, one a month, one's every 2 weeks, you can have 4. What recourse does the village have in giving approval or denial for those special events?
So currently it's the liquor commissioner or their designee. So currently being the liquor commissioner, it would be President Brawley. However, if he wanted to delegate that to somebody on staff, he certainly could. And we can certainly structure that in a different way if the board, deems appropriate or wants to set some ground rules up front. I just, drafted this in such a way to maintain flexibility at this point in time. And then the third component is they had requested the sale of growlers. So we did add that prepackaged sale of growlers to be allowed as a to-go element of the liquor license. One thing that has changed from the draft that was sent to you all that we found out this afternoon was with regard to the tasting component. And our understanding initially was that they wanted the tasting component more aligned with what your current Class O license is. However, they don't want it necessarily as a promotional tasting, but more as a sale tasting element, which I think would already fall with under those categories A and B, either the special event or the normal restaurant services. However, we would ask tonight that you allow us to just explicitly enumerate that if it's the board's pleasure into the Class R license rather than requiring them to get the separate O license, because I don't think the O license is actually what they were requesting once they came forward and clarified with us. And yes, I think right now that there's a couple other minor amendments, just clarifying language throughout the liquor code to make greater consistency where it enumerates a number of liquor licenses which have certain exceptions. We just added the Class R where it was appropriate, in the other provisions of the code. So with that, I can take any other questions that the board may have.
I have a question related to that tasting. So we're talking more about that, like being able to purchase a flight of beers where you're tasting 3 or 4 different smaller portions of beer?
Right, I think that's what they're talking about, yes.
Okay, so
it's
it's not
more of a
really,
for
that's
sale
just a
type.
different menu item, right?
Right.
It's not really a
Yes.
tasting.
Yeah,
item.
initially
So they don't
had
really
said
need the
tasting.
tasting license we have, because doing the flights would fall under the
Tasting license is
they
for
already have.
consumption at Binny's or something like that.
Yes.
Whereas they're
More
already
of a
allowing consumption.
promotional sampling of a certain, and you're tasting, the Class O currently, has, you can only have X amount within however much time. And from now, what they're explaining is their intent of tasting. I think it already does fall with under, a normal restaurant service, but we would just want to expressly enumerate that so there's no confusion in the future.
Perfect, thank you.
One difference I want to point out between this and the other establishments that currently are allowed outdoor service of alcohol, this, where the way it's written now, does allow for live music outside until 10 p.m. That is currently prohibited with the other outdoor service licenses we have. So I just wanted you to be aware of that is in here.
How far away are the residences from that property?
I mean, your closest ones are probably going to be on River over across from the park, right? Or right over here on Mill.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
And who are the other folks that have the outdoor license that cannot have music? I remember discussing that in the past.
I mean, Pig Dog has that license, right? Anybody that has a restaurant license, but I'm trying to think who has the outdoor.
Pig Dog, Grandma's Table, Poor Boys Now,
Yeah.
those were added for outdoor.
And I think
VFW, do they have
They-
outdoors?
Their license allows for outdoor sales also, but so that would be,
Yeah, and I think the distinction was, this is an event venue versus just a restaurant, where Potbelly's might have a live person. That's a little bit different scenario than an entire venue that's intended
Yes.
for these type of events. But again, that's within the board's
yeah.
discretion. as to
We
whether
felt
or
it was
not.
appropriate here for this use, but I did want to point that out since that is
Thank
different
you.
than what we do at other places.
Okay.
Chief, do you see any issues with any of these licenses or how they're enforcement of or anything?
We shouldn't have an issue with it.
Okay.
I like that that's the only part the microphone picked up. The record will reflect. We shouldn't have an issue with it. Thanks, Chief.
They didn't say they were going to flip any pancakes, Chief, so I don't think you have to worry about it.
I saw that. All right. Anything else, Laura?
No, not on that item.
All right. Anybody have any questions on, this is item C?
Question kind of related. With the proposal to do the St. Patrick's Day event, I think that's the special event coming up. What jurisdiction, is it the village, is it the state that would authorize or deny that type of event based on the current COVID restrictions in phase 4?
Really, the village is who monitor, I think consistent with what you've been doing with any establishment that's been open or allowed. I think it really falls within, the state has its parameters, but the village has, the state has made the local governments the primary enforcement mechanism of those.
It is the,
And then, within, again, the village.
sure. Has the village requested the parameters of what that event that they are potentially putting forward would be in terms of number of people, spacing? Are they adhering to all the phase 4 guidance? Like, what are we asking of that organization when they want to put on an outdoor event like this?
We are gathering that information still. We've asked them for more details before we will allow them to go forward with the special event.
So the issue of the liquor license does not indicate an acceptance or an agreement to allow that event to go on at this point in time? Not that it
Correct.
won't, or we can't get to that point,
Yeah,
correct?
that is correct. We have other issues we need to, they won't have a CO yet, so how, we got to figure out food and,
Sure.
yeah, figure out what they're doing about crowd control and the number of people, so yes, this doesn't allow them to do the event.
Okay, thanks.
They have, they're big in the Irish for March coming up, and they're big on the Bears, so they might have some kind of
Quality.
Bears party when they
You got
lose
one
or
no vote
something.
there. All right. Thank you. Anything else?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion on ordinance 1905? This is creating that class of liquor license.
1905. No?
All right, call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes?
Trustee Betzinger?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Lee? And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
All right, that carries 5-0. Thank you. And then item D is ordinance 1906. This is granting a liquor license to Gray's Mill?
Correct, and the only change I would have would be consistent with the tasting license, in that I don't think we need to now grant the additional Class O license, so we would strike that line and just issue the special event license, or I'm sorry, the event venue license.
Yes, and I should have stopped us before we voted, because you need that for ordinance 1905, correct? You're going to amend the ordinance that we just voted on per what she stated.
Yeah, the only change to that would just be to specifically say and tastings in
All
there.
right, so let's rewind.
Correct.
Motion to approve 1905, subject to attorney revision
There you go.
to the tasting portion.
Correct.
Second.
Seconded.
So, let's not get all hyper-technical. Can we just vote on it again? If there's no objections? We can get in a whole Robert's Rules thing here, but we're not going to do that. All right,
I
go
think that'll
ahead.
be sufficient.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer? Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
And approved. Thank you for all being super rational. All right. Item D this evening is 1906, granting the liquor license subject to attorney review.
Correct.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
All right, and that carries 5-0. Just a note, when that is finalized, could you provide us all with a copy of that? Not you, but thank you. All right, moving on to item E this evening, ordinance 1907, amending the village code regarding tobacco products. Waiver of first, passage on the second. Attorney Julian?
Correct, and this is just a cleanup item. Currently, state law allows for online sales of tobacco products, and as part of that, a certain age verification, third-party software is required, and currently the village's ordinance does not have that requirement. So while the person would still have to comply with state law, the village doesn't really have any enforcement authority in that regard, so we would just recommend adding the state law language into your ordinance to give the police the ability to enforce that component if it was appropriate.
Okay, moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Carries 5-0. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
All right, item F this evening is ordinance 1908, authorizing the issuance of $17.8 million in general obligation alternate bonds for the proposed financing of the new public works facility and refunding our previous alternate bonds. This is a waiver of first, passage on the second. Director Van Voren.
Thank you, President Brawley. In front of the board this evening is ordinance 1908. It will authorize the issuance of general obligation alternate revenue bonds, as you just stated, for the new public works facility and for refunding the Series 2011 bonds. Excuse me. The public works facility currently includes $16 million, authorization of $16 million, and the refunding currently includes approximately $1.8 million. Based on discussions earlier this evening in regards to the new Public Works building, we anticipate that we will be able to issue a lower amount of bonds when it comes to that. We have to wait 45 days, which before we issue the bonds, ends up being around 60 days because of when the board meetings happen. So then we would come back to the board April 12th, and on the meeting on April 12th, the sale of the bonds would happen, and then the board would approve the ordinance issuing the bonds that night. If there's any other questions at this time, I could answer those.
I have just two questions.
I have
One
one.
is,
Go ahead.
no, one is that I'm glad that Denny gets to vote to increase our debt by 16 million right before he leaves. Thank you. Job well done. But the other question is, could you go through the, we've talked about this, but the refunding. So currently, you said it's about $1.8 million of existing bonds that we have. Look at that we are basically rolling into this new bond to save us money.
Yes.
And we're going to save, how much money?
67,400.
That was my question. It's a good question.
I'm sorry, you can ask it, it's fine.
The present value debt service savings would be $67,370.25.
I like how you talk in finance director code, by the way. But it's 67,000.
Yes.
All right, perfect.
Does the issuance of the bond cost the village?
The issuance of that piece or
The total,
the total? Hold on a second.
in that piece, you know where I'm going with this. It's gonna cost us a couple dollars to issue that money to do actually saving? I mean, it's still going to be a positive number, we're saving money.
So the total for the bonds together, the new money and the refunding, is roughly $249,000. For the cost of issuance for the refunding portion, it is roughly $23,000. 44.
We've been bouncing these for, well, they should have been paid off before now, but we've been bouncing them constantly to save money. But if you're gonna issue bonds at 17.8, and we're gonna eliminate that outside,
Right, we won't issue at 17.8 then.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Right now, we're just setting, we're setting the ceiling. This is the most we would issue.
Most,
But we'll come
okay.
back to you and say,
Because I was gonna say, if there's
Yep.
$1 million left over, we could pay part of that.
no,
to
we'll,
get
we'll
it
just
done.
issue less
Okay.
debt.
All right,
So ideally, we'll issue less, but
Yep.
that's the math,
It is a
right? We're
not to,
capping.
Yeah, we're just setting the max, and
it's
then
a
we'll come
not
back
to
to you.
exceed number.
Once we know if people are good with eliminating the garage, or if there's other things we discover between now and then we'll say, here's the number we actually need.
We'll have that actual number in the meeting in April. Yep.
I'll be gone.
So,
No, you still
You'll
be
still be
here.
Yeah,
here.
that's right.
yeah, see, oh, you're gonna, I will pick you up and drive you to this meeting. I'm just kidding. So the timeline for this, so we approve this ordinance tonight. You said in about 60 days is when the sale will actually occur. We will approve it at that board meeting. Does anything happen in the meanwhile? Is there any public hearing requirement? I saw that there can be if there's objectors and whatnot, but
Yes, so the authorizing ordinance is in front of the board tonight. We have to publish the ordinance itself as well as the notice of the BINA hearing, it's Bond Issue Notification Act. That will take place this week on February 25th. There are drafts of the preliminary official statement that will go back and forth between different parties involved. We will have a bond rating call on during the week of March 15th. We'll receive a bond rating as of March 26th. The bond ordinance will be distributed on March 29th, and that is when Spear also finalizes and prints the preliminary official statement. April 12th is the bond sale, and that night, the board would adopt the ordinance. The bond closing itself does not happen until April 29th.
okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
Any other questions?
So moved. Second.
Any other discussion? All right, call the roll.
Trustee Guyer,
Yes.
Trustee Lee,
Yep.
Trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
Trustee Marisak,
Yes.
and Trustee Betzinger.
Oh, it hurts, yes.
Drag them across the finish line. And everybody voted for that but me. Just kidding. And yes, just trying to screw all you guys. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm 100% on board. All right, moving on, so that's that item. Moving on to item G this evening is revising the IGA with Oswego, Yorkville, and Kent County regarding federal lobbying services. Sorry, Administrator Zelfel. Still getting used to that?
It's okay. You guys just approved this in January. There were then some changes that have been made, and so I felt it's appropriate to bring it back to you, just to let you know what those were and have you approve it again. The two changes, one, any of the four parties has the right to get out of the agreement now, with written notice. If so, it says then the parties remaining will share equally in the cost, because then you have to pick up that fourth leg or third leg, depending on how many drop out.
I guess we could always just opt out then.
Yep,
if we
then we could
decide.
just opt out at that point too. And the other thing just sets the venue for any legal action to Kendall County.
Makes sense.
So those are really the only changes. They were minor, but I still felt it was appropriate to bring it back to you since you guys approved it to begin with.
Should there be legal action? Is the cost of that legal action shared equally across the four parties? Or is the county going to pick up that, since that's where,
No, I believe it would be shared among the,
that's
well, I mean,
unfortunate.
it's going to depend, I mean, if it's the legal action is all of us against the lobbyists, then we would share in that. Now, if it's for some reason us against another party in the agreement, then we'd each pick up our own.
And the reason for the Kendall County is because the other parties are all located in Kendall County, and we're in Kane, right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the lobbyist is in DC, but we would want it here if there was an issue, so.
Okay. Any discussion or further questions?
So moved.
Second?
Go ahead.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, last item for separate action is purchase of a Bobcat in the amount of $63,517.
Thank you, President Browley. So as you mentioned, in front of the board is the purchase of a track-type skid loader for the Public Works operations. This particular piece of equipment will service all the different divisions of Public Works. One of the key things that to take away from this is the fact that Public Works has increased their staff levels over the course of the last few years. And so obviously the intent of that is to reduce the amount of contractual services that the village partakes in and bring those services in-house. As part of increasing staff, there's also a need for increase to equipment. Therefore, that is why we are coming forth with this particular request tonight. A couple of key items is why we're moving forward with this item is the mowing of our detention basin in the Parkview area. Currently, Public Works is budgeting $6,000 a year to rent a piece of equipment specific to this piece, and as opposed to continuing to pay that rental fee and only have the ability to utilize the piece of equipment several times throughout the year, we feel as though it is justifiable to move forward with purchase and allow our different divisions the opportunity to use this piece of equipment throughout the course of the entire year. So therefore, we are requesting the approval tonight of the Bobcat track-type skid loader for $63,517. This item was currently placed into the preliminary budget for FY22. Due to a forecasted surplus in funds, we are requesting to move this item forward to the current fiscal year. If there's any questions, I'm definitely happy to answer those at this time. Trustee Marisak.
This includes the attachment for the mowing?
This does not include the attachment. That's a separate item.
And what's the cost of that item?
Roughly $15,000.
So 3 years' worth of rental for us
Correct.
to purchase it.
Now, that particular attachment serves multiple different purposes. It's not only for the mowing, it's also a, they call it a brush mower. So what it does is it's capable of removing dense wood vegetation. So it's not particular just to traditional grass like the current mowing deck that we have now on our, a different piece of equipment.
Small trees and things of
Correct.
that nature. As
Yeah.
as
it's-
seen on TV.
It's pretty impressive.
Are you buying that attachment next year?
That's the plan, yes. Or I'm sorry, no, I believe we were talking about moving that item forward as well. So we'll have this piece of equipment available to us for spring operations.
No, I just, that would be something that I feel should have been included in this packet, that, by the way, there's another $15,000 on top of the 65.
I mean, we definitely could have. It's not being purchased through the same company. It's a different unit. It's an attachment to this particular piece of equipment. So, I mean, we could have pieced them together. It would have been two separate items, as the Atlas Bobcat does not sell that particular item.
So you have in here the budgeted amount of $65,000. That's in the proposed FY22 budget.
Correct.
Do you have another line item in that budget for 15 grand?
Correct.
Makes sense. Thanks.
So moved. Second.
That 65 is going to come out of the proposed 22?
Correct.
Thank you.
Good
As
call.
well as
So there
15.
there was a motion and a second. Anything else? All right, go ahead.
Is that you, Denny? Okay. Trustee Lee? No. No. Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman? Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger?
Yes.
That carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Does anybody need a quick break?
Yep.
All right. 3.5 minutes. Good to go?
Yes.
All right, so we'll re-adjourn the meeting here, and we'll move on to items for discussion. The first one is the UDO, and go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. This evening is a continuation of a conversation we had at the last village board meeting about the Unified Development Ordinance. I'm here to follow up on predominantly two questions that were posed at the last village board meeting. The first one was in regards to looking into allowing larger garages on larger parcels. So I also, just so you know, also I have Jake Side from CMAP here in case you have any questions for him as well on the Zoom. But back to the garages. So we resurrected some of the language from our previous draft. And so that language reads as follows. For zoning lots less than 20,000 square feet, the maximum cumulative size of an attached or detached garage is 880 square feet. For zoning lots 200 or 20,000 square feet or greater, the maximum cumulative size of attached or detached garage is 1,100 square feet. The garage shall not be larger than the building footprint of the principal structure. So a couple reasons we went with that size. I spoke with building inspection supervisor Klupar, and he was concerned about going much larger than 1,100 square feet because oftentimes, you know, some of the parcels that are larger sometimes have smaller homes, so the building footprint, but then also it gets into our maximum height for accessory structures on residential properties. I believe our maximum height is 15 feet, so the further out you get with the walls, the further the pitch of the roof normally gets. So that is the rationale for that size. The second item that I wanted to cover was an inquiry about more information regarding fences. So I did put in the board packet the Montgomery fence restrictions table or matrix, and it goes down all the subdivisions, talks about the existing height of fences allowed in areas without an annexation agreement, and then all of the annexation agreements. It also goes into HOAs. As you can see, the vast majority of annexation agreements require 4-foot tall fences of varying design, and a lot of the annexation agreements expire as soon as Friday all the way through 2025. And then some of them do still have homeowners associations that cover fence standards, and some of them have homeowners associations that do not. Those were the two items that I really wanted to go over this evening. I do encourage feedback regarding fences because, as I mentioned, we're proposing 5-foot fences, and in order to be successful in implementing that in the future, we would really need board support. So if you're looking at a different fence standard to put in this ordinance, I'd really love to hear your feedback. Yes.
So I have a question. So Arbor Ridge, 6-foot tall fences currently, and it says under village standard, yes. The village standard is currently, what, 8?
No, sorry, under the umbrella, sorry.
Under the
is what
umbrella
I'm-
of
is
the
what I'm
village standard.
referencing there.
But now
Yeah.
we're proposing it to become 5.
That is correct.
So all of the people with 6-foot fence would be non-conforming, and anybody that wanted to put up a fence now, even though their neighbor has a 6-foot, is only going to be able to put up a 5-foot.
That is how that would work.
And that's true of Arbor Ridge,
Montgomery Crossing, and Saratoga Springs.
And,
All three
uh,
of those are going to have the same problem, correct?
That is correct, and also the parcels that are not within a set subdivision.
So it'd be no different than anybody here downtown. Your neighbor had a 6. Some of them probably have even taller from decades ago.
Also, there are very few, especially on North River, that were allowed 8-foot abutting industrial. So there's a couple of those as well.
Well, even, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but in our subdivision, Orchard Prairie North, picket fence or French Gothic style, I know we have a board-on-board option, because I have it in my yard.
Doesn't mean it's legal.
Well, we'll get into the legality later, but, which it is.
Well, that is a homeowners association restriction rather than a village board restriction. So if we do get confirmation from the homeowners association that would allow that style of fence, we move forward with it.
Okay.
Sorry,
Mhm.
I raised my hand.
And then,
I got to sit up to the microphone to be considered. It says current fence standard in that second column. That's the current standard under their annexation agreement, the PUD, or village code.
So that depends. So the current fence standard is what they're operating under. So then on the next column, if it's an annexation agreement, yes, so that corresponds with, so for instance, Arbor Ridge annexation agreement, NA, they don't have an annexation agreement, so therefore it's under the village's standard. For the next 4, they are all under annexation agreement standards.
Got it.
And so on, so.
and then my other question, or I guess my comment, when we go to the size of the outbuildings, so if I owned 3 acres and I had a 2,000 square foot house, I couldn't build a big pole barn over 1,000 square feet, 1,100 square feet? What's the point in having the land if I can't?
If you bought a chicken and called it agricultural, then
We're not going into therapy chickens, we've been down that road. But if I have 3 acres and I want to do something that's, I can't do anything over 1,100 square feet, what's the point in having the land?
That's what we're proposing at this time.
I'm not going to vote for that, we got to fix that.
Would you have a preferred size?
I will next time we meet.
Well, and I guess here's a thought on that. We're not talking about a lot of parcels, I don't think. So the 20,000 square foot lot is way bigger than like any home on the west side of town, right? Those are probably 10, 12,000 square foot. A 20,000 square foot lot is still only half an acre. And the way that I read that is that you couldn't have something that's bigger than the building footprint. So you would need a 2,000 square foot home, first floor area, to get a 2,000 square foot. Well, actually, you still wouldn't even be allowed to do that. You're maxed at 1,100. But the point is a good one, that if you have a 3-acre lot and you wanted to put up a pole barn, could you?
Under this, as long as it was 1,100 square feet. And I think oftentimes, I guess, it really depends on what your goal is. We do not allow agricultural animals even on these larger parcels. What I know, people can store a lot in I guess people around here call them pole barns, I call them machine sheds, just a little different terminology. But I guess it kind of depends on what you want that backyard to look like. But in regards to the 20,000 square feet, President Brawley, you are correct. We really focused on on excluding parcels in the western portion of the community or the newer built portions of the community, mostly because their garages and driveways are front facing. They're not exceedingly wide parcels. It's tough to get a driveway around, something of that nature. It's just the design of that subdivision or the design of those pieces of land, and that's why we tried to get away from that size.
So if trustee Youngerman wins the lottery and buys this 3-acre parcel of land, would he have the option to come in for a special use variance of the ordinance like we do currently?
He would have an option to come in for a variance. That is true.
Okay.
It's not-
Because again,
I
he would
know,
need a
but-
variance anyways, because to get something that large, it would be taller than 15 feet, which would exceed our building restrictions anyways.
Yeah, but what is the restriction on a garage? Height?
Yeah, accessory structures are 15 feet in residential.
Which is not real tall.
But
Is it 15 or 12 now? I forget. It's one of the two, but I can double check.
I know all the board members, they know me, they'd never grant it anyway.
True that.
I mean, let's be honest.
Hey, this and every other town around
Yeah,
here,
exactly.
that's for sure.
Welcome to the Tri-County area, trustee Youngerman.
I don't like the idea of governing for, I guess, relying on somebody to earn a variance or to comply with to get a variance to get what they need. But at the same time, I think we're probably going to be making some, I hate to say this now as we're about ready to approve it, as we start to enforce this new UDO, there will likely be some tweaks where we rationally came up with 1,100 square feet, and somebody's gonna come in and say, that doesn't work based on my experience, and maybe we either tweak the ordinance down the road, maybe we grant a one-off variance for certain things. We could dive into this super deep and look at this for a long time, and maybe the 1,100 works for our residentially zoned parcels that are that big. Like,
If
maybe
it
it
works
never
for
comes up.
98% of,
The reality is you don't have that many of these lots that size to really deal with.
Yeah.
And the request, I mean, Jared, how many requests have we had for structures that size in the last several years?
Probably 3 or 4.
Yeah, it doesn't come up all the time, plus like you said, it could be, the ordinance is not gonna be locked in stone. This is like any other zoning ordinance, it just happens to be called a unified development code, so. You're gonna make adjustments as you move forward.
That is true. We do anticipate what I would refer to as field testing the ordinance, and with the knowledge that there probably will be, just as we have with our old ordinance, it comes up for review time to time. I have one sign item that I noticed today that I plan on correcting for the next meeting and finalizing as well.
Okay. I think that the fence table is a good start. I think it needs just a little bit of tweaking, not to get into the design of it. Just seeing it for the first time as a resident was a little unclear. But it's good information. We just gotta maybe tweak it a little bit.
We can work to streamline it.
That's just one man's opinion, so.
You mentioned garages, but you never mentioned sheds. What are they gonna do on sheds? I mean, Rich and I are gonna be gone by May 1st, and all these people come in and want their sheds and fences, so we could care less, but what are you gonna do to those people? I mean,
I'm gonna tell them you voted for it. Go to your house.
because they make regular chicken sheds now. I mean, that's just let you know, in case you wanna.
So in regards to sheds, we talked about it just briefly at the last meeting, predominantly in regards to the non-scientific survey that went out. But currently, we are proposing a maximum of one shed of a maximum size of 200 square feet, which is very similar to what we have right now in the current zoning ordinance.
I thought one of these HOHs had no sheds.
So some of them do.
Liquid Creek,
Very north.
Liquid Creek only has
And I
124
think-
sheds in it, but we don't allow
The
them.
the residents say that they don't want, or they want sheds, but when they realize that, okay, I've got a 7,200 square foot lot, right? It's a suburban lot. I have an easement down each side. I have an easement in the back. It's in the middle of my backyard. And that's really, yeah, I mean, it's, I can kind of shift it to the left a little or to the right, but it's still in the middle of my backyard.
It's true. Yeah. All right.
Ain't my problem. Okay.
Thank you for the information on the fencing, by the way. I appreciate the,
Oh, you're welcome.
Jared, anything else? Jake, I know we made you wait around till 9:30 for this. Any other color to add to this? I appreciate you sticking around.
No, sir. I appreciate y'all having us. Like you said, there's definitely going to be some tweaks to this down the road, but I think we've got it, well in hand at this point. You've got a really good unified development ordinance for the village here.
Would you grant me that variance if I came before you, Jake, and asked you for a variance? See, everyone's
Select me to
shaking their
the
head
to the
no.
board. We can have that conversation, Trustee Youngerman.
Jake, just say no, Jake.
All right, thank you.
Can you work up something on mailboxes too?
All right. Anything else? That is just for discussion, correct?
That
Yes.
is correct.
All right, so what's the future of the UDO look like?
So I'm certainly glad you asked. So I plan on bringing this before the board in conjunction with the zoning map at the next meeting. I was going to ask for a consensus as to whether you'd like it on as an item for separate action, consent, or discussion.
It's the pleasure of the board.
How are we feeling about that fence height?
I'm not crazy. Yeah, I'm not crazy about the fence height.
Well, if you have thoughts now, that would be really helpful. Second meeting?
There
you go.
Yeah,
But
let's see if
so-
we can.
We don't have anybody that's at 5 feet. So I'm thinking, why would we?
Oh, to equally anger everybody in the village, yeah.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
ones that have a 4-foot are mad, they could have had a taller one.
I see what you're doing, Rich.
yeah, let's tick off all the residents at one time.
So that is,
You granted a variance for a 5-foot fence last year. What subdivision was that?
Blackberry Crossing.
Yep.
Yes. And that,
Set the precedent for
Of that white vinyl, right?
that's
5
correct.
foot.
So that is, I think trustee Marisak makes a wonderful point. That is why trustee Betzinger, and bringing it back up again, that is why I bring it up at almost every meeting, public hearing, plan commission that I can, because it will be controversial. It will be controversial regardless of what height we go to. So staff will certainly need the buy-in from the village board on 6 or 5 or 4.
I mean, I'm okay with 6.
I'm okay with the 5, but I don't think that you can tell the people that their subdivisions always had a 6-foot. No, you can't do 6 foot anymore, you can do 5.
Yeah.
But
Is
then it's
that-
not unified.
Is that accurate? Our current code allows 6?
That is correct.
Okay.
So we're gonna change our current code to 5 and then say, oh, sorry, Matt, Steve's got a 6-foot, lives next door, but now, you should have done it last year. You could have had 6, now you only get 5.
But I didn't get my
It
shed,
doesn't
so
seem
we're
very
even.
unified to me. It just, I mean, we're talking about
We're
unifying.
just using that word.
Yeah, I'm a user.
So, I'm sorry, I don't mean to make light of it. It's interesting, it's because we have a lot at 4, right? And many of those have annexation agreements or an HOA that requires that. You can't go any higher. For others, this is just so,
Yeah, you let them have 6 and look out. I mean, it's.
well, and that's the thing, they wouldn't be,
Subdivisions right next to each other.
Those agreements expire.
well, even then, so like,
My HOA is gonna become the rule, which is 4.
Right.
Regardless of what the village says and the annexation agreement expiration. My HOA still says 4, so it's still 4, but it's uniformed. Everybody's at 4 in my subdivision.
There are only, sorry if I may, real quick, there are only 4 subdivisions that have HOAs with fence restrictions.
so, and that's Lakewood Creek West and Lakewood Creek.
Yep.
Orchard Prairie North.
Blackberry
OPN.
Crossing West.
An OPN.
All right. So I generally lean towards if an HOA wants to set their restrictions on what they can do in their neighborhood, as long as it's less than what the code is,
That's fine.
do whatever you
Yeah.
want. For us to go, you can tell that I don't have a good answer here. I'm just buying time. It's
out the word
tough. It's
unified.
tough because, like my neighbor just put up a 4-foot fence. And now we're in Orchard Prairie North, so it doesn't matter. But if we were in, Arbor Ridge, or that's a bad example, Balmaray, he could have been able to do a 5, or the flip side of that. I just don't know what the right answer is. I like the idea of a 5-foot as opposed to a 6, because I'm 5'8" and I can still see over it. And
Wilson.
generally people, right. But at a 6 foot, you tend to close off a neighborhood. We need to think holistically as to what the community would look like with 6-foot fences everywhere, which could happen as these start to expire. We could just have 6-footers all over. Is that the grand vision that we would have for the community, is to close off your rear yards entirely? You want to have some privacy, but you still want to be able to see the community outside.
It would look like
I
a
think
prison
there-
yard.
I
That's
think
what we've
there's
been saying in our
There's a
HOA
counterpiece
forever.
to that thought, though. If the concern is, man, everybody in the community would want to put up a 6-foot fence. Well, shoot, everyone in the community would want it. So why would we want to set a restriction on something that everyone in the community would want? If that's the concern, is that so many people will want this, we don't want to do that. Well, wait a minute, that's our charge is to provide for those folks. There is no right answer to this.
And you want to tell them
100%
that
there's
they
no right
have to
answer.
meet, they have to see their neighbors. Some people don't want to see their neighbors.
And I see both sides, so
I love my
father-in-law's-
4 foot in my
My father-in-law's got 6-foot solid fence around his backyard. It's his own haven. Nobody else, really gets involved. He does his own stuff. And it's great. It's just a different, you don't see your neighbors. There's a lot less of that. And I guess, is it our charge to do what we can do so you can still see your neighbor if you want? But then if your neighbor has something in the backyard that he doesn't like,
I mean, I love the 4 foot because of that. We visit and talk over the fence all the time. I like it where I live.
I like the 5-foot idea. I think 6 foot turns it into like a prison yard, because these suburban lots are 72 to 10,000 square feet anyway. We've talked about that for 13 years at Orchard Prairie North, that a 6-foot height, I wouldn't be able to see over a 6-foot fence.
The ones we came in and talked on this, if you remember, all had dogs. And that goes with how high can my dog go compared to the neighbor's dog? That's basically what it came down.
With
My
all this
little
snow,
dog
mine's getting ready to go over my 4 foot, like it's not even there.
My little poodle can get over a 4 foot.
It sounds like 5's the number, and that they got it right.
That's basically what we came up with. You're not gonna make everybody happy. There's no one single answer to this question. There hasn't been. Jay kind of laughed at us when we first started this process at UDO 2 years ago. He said, really? Fences are the big issue in Montgomery? Yeah, they are.
It is.
So, but you're not gonna make everybody happy. There's no one clear-cut answer. We came up with 5 because we thought that was a reasonable compromise for those annexation agreements that are gonna expire. You already know that there's been pressure for 5-foot fences. You granted a variance for 5-foot fences, and that seemed like a good standard. Maybe an alternative for some of those areas like Arbor Ridge would be you allow them to maintain 6 foot. We don't necessarily like proposing that because now you haven't had a standard
Right.
across the village. But that would maybe be an option to consider, that there are fences that are already allowed as 6 foot.
Replace that 6, but not build new at 6.
Correct.
New would be 5.
Right.
Yeah, good luck tracking that. It is tough. Question for you, is a 5, and it's a silly question, is a 5-foot fence readily available for
I just had
purchase
the exact same
at
thought. I was
Home
thinking,
Depot, Menards, all that?
you can have a 5-foot fence, but nobody makes them. They're a custom fence and they're really expensive. I don't know.
That is a good question. I am not certain as to the ready availability of 5-foot fences. I do know that when it comes to wood fences, they can be pretty easily trimmed. In regards to vinyl, I'm not sure if that is exactly the same principle.
With vinyl, you're dealing with usually not a Home Depot
Right.
kind of situation for vinyl, and those fence companies can do 4, 5, 6,
Yeah.
8,
Mhm.
I hope that guy we made him cut the fence down had kept the pieces, he could put them back up.
Yeah. One thing to note, just to make a note of this, once we do approve this, we're going to need to at least mention this or get this information out to some of these communities. I guess if they don't have an HOA, there's no way to get the information out, but there's got to be some public dissemination of this information so that people are aware, so that then they can call and be upset that we did this.
That is, we've been working to make people aware that this is out there. It's been a little challenging here as of late to disseminate that information, but we will certainly try, because as you may know, you of course will, I'm sure, get some phone calls, but we as staff will definitely notice the change at the front counter, that is for sure.
I propose mayor on the move fence talk, as soon as COVID ends.
I'm writing that down right now. All right. Anything
Maybe in
else?
the newsletter,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
a
clear.
little
It's-
blurb about it. Contact Jared with questions.
So if I may, we'll place this on, item for separate action for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay,
That'd be great.
sounds great.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, last item for discussion this evening is, moving on, our last item for discussion this evening is the FY '22 General Fund presentation. Director Van Voren.
How do I?
I know it's rare.
And I'd like to thank Director Van Voren for the microfiche that I have stacked in front of me. I'll just take pictures of it with my phone and blow them up. I gave him 1117 paper one year to do it. Okay. Meg? Yeah.
I'm not 40, so I don't need it. All right, Justin, you ready?
All right.
I'm 50.
Thank you, President Brawley. 3 minutes? Okay. Let's go. Fiscal year '21 financial report and fiscal year '22 budget. First slide, general fund is base operating fund of the village, and contains all the governmental activities except for those that need to be accounted for elsewhere. The fiscal year '21 budgeted revenues were $11,794,000 compared to projected revenues of $12,335,000. The graph on the right shows those revenues expected for fiscal year '21.
Wind them up.
One of the biggest items in regards to, there were restrictions placed on our residents and businesses due to the pandemic, and this had a negative effect on our sales tax, which we expect to be roughly $300,000 less than budget. In addition, the village was not able to hold any community events like Montgomery Fest and River Run, so obviously donations were down for those events. Expenditures for fiscal year '21 were budgeted at $11,653,000 compared to $11,334,000 projected. Excuse me. The village began the fiscal year '21 with a list of non-essential items that where the village could delay expenditures. Individual items were assessed during the year, and staff held off on roughly $250,000 of expenditures for the entire year. The village worked with vendors for our community events and were able to delay these costs for the year. In addition, there were staff positions that went unfilled for at least some portion of fiscal year '21. Coronavirus pandemic, Village Montgomery had been proactive in our response, including water bill assistance to customers in need, small business grant programs, and allowing outdoor dining at our restaurants. I'd like to thank the village staff for continuing to provide services throughout, as well as the village board for support of staff and for programs to help residents and the businesses. Fiscal year 22 budget. The budgeted revenues is $12,168,000 compared to expenditures of $12,123,000, resulting in a net surplus of $45,000. This number is slightly different from what the board had heard earlier. That is due to moving a few items up into fiscal year 21 from fiscal year 22. The top three revenues, sales, property, and state income taxes, make up nearly % of general fund revenues. I'm not going to talk through these slides, but you can see the growth in our state sales tax and property tax. This shows the distribution of the property taxes across all of the taxing bodies. Note, the Village of Montgomery is right in the middle at 5.3%, and the school district is obviously the largest one there.
And that's just a sample, because
That is a sample. It is actually, this is for the district that has the highest assessed value.
got it.
So that's how we do that. This just shows the calculation of the equalized assessed value and the property tax rate, equating out to the total property taxes. The growth, actually, I will back up. The village board froze property taxes for 7th year on existing buildings. So the growth you see in recent years has been from residential and commercial growth taking place. This combines for an increase of approximately $33,000 for fiscal year 22. Income taxes, also known as local government distributive fund. Illinois Municipal League estimates the amount each municipality receives per capita, and that amount has gone up to $110.90. In addition, in fiscal year 22, we are using an estimated 2020 census of 20,000 residents throughout the year. The governor did propose in the state's fiscal year 22 budget to reduce our share of the LGDF by 10%. The village will address this issue once the final state budget is known. In terms of expenditures, for fiscal year 22, and I didn't even put the numbers on here. Sorry, hold on a second. So, actually, it was on one of the other slides. The budgeted revenues, budgeted expenditures for fiscal year 22 are $12,123,000. The graph shows where the village plans to expend those limited general funds, and if you note, the police and public works together account for almost 70% of the village general fund expenditures. Obviously, as a government entity, our largest expense is for personnel. There were no new requests for staff in fiscal year 22. The previously authorized patrol officer position will be filled once a new list of candidates is completed. Sonia Apt will start as new Director of Community Development on March 1st, 2021. And it's only right to end the budget discussion with congratulations to Director of Community Development, Rich Young, on his well-deserved retirement. If the board has any questions at this time, I could answer those.
About the general fund, not about Rich's retirement.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you, Justin, appreciate it. The one thing that I would ask, I guess first a comment. So when COVID first hit, Jeff, and I'm sure Justin, went through the budget with all the department heads, froze a ton of spending, because we didn't know what was gonna happen. And all the same while, the board is pushing things that would actually make our budget go the other way, but assistance to residents, businesses, and that kind of thing. It took us several months to see our sales tax figures actually come in. March comes in July?
Yes.
Is it? So April, in August. So it takes a long time, but we started to release several of those things. So it's not, by magic that our FY21 budget will essentially be balanced more or less. We'll be in the black at the end of FY21. So I do want to give credit to, Jeff, Justin, all the department heads for doing what seems like it looked easy, seems like it just what you normally should do. But the reality is, the other comment is, in Montgomery, the way that we're set up with our sales taxes is quite different from some of these other communities where they're either high service. We have our big sales tax generators that are doing very well this year. And so our sales tax figures did not take a huge hit. We don't have a casino. There's many communities out there that are having much harder conversations when they talk about their general fund budget. So we're in great shape. I think it's partly because we're uniquely situated, but partly because of our staff. So I do appreciate that. In the FY22 budget, there was a request for an intern in the community development department. I know that we didn't have enough funding before, but because Mark's buying all kinds of equipment in FY21, that does actually free up, at least 45 grand and maybe more once you buy the attachment for that. Is that something that we should consider at this time? My thought here is, and maybe we wait until Sonia comes on, is we took more of a relaxed approach last year towards code enforcement, right? Middle of a pandemic, not really the most popular thing for us to be doing. I think this year we're going to need to enforce our ordinances a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit more unpopular, but I think it's required. It's really what our job is. If we had, especially at this time, an additional body to help our staff do that, I think that would be helpful. Just wanted to see what the board thinks.
To make them go out and enforce new fence sites.
We talked about this at our meeting. It was $15 for 20 hours is what they said. So that sounded reasonable, but they said it didn't. Now if we got the money, it's perfect.
The total budgeted amount, or the total amount requested was $7,800. So just to give you an idea, against the $45,000 surplus that is currently showing there.
I get you. Anybody opposed, for, or against it, anything? I mean,
During our meeting, didn't we discuss, possibility of, it would be like a dual community policing / code enforcement?
I mean, that's something we're projecting in the future, is creating like a community service officer that would do, that code enforcement would be something they would do. I mean, but we're not proposing that in this coming year. That'd be down the road.
This would just be strictly.
This would be strictly as an intern, so this would be just this year, and then you'd reevaluate.
And it's a part-time.
At 20 hours. But didn't we have a $100,000 surplus in a way? So at the end? So
they got their pots of money, and we can't pay for somebody's salary out of FY21
surplus.
unless we're negative in 22,
All right.
which we could do, but we don't want to do that.
No.
But yes, like you said, there's a greater surplus now than what we were showing, so, certainly we can put it in now. we can wait and discuss it with Sonia when she comes in. Obviously, we'll have meetings before this budget's approved, so.
Okay.
I think that sounds like the logical thing. You know, she's going to come in and run the department.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll check with her in March. We'll put a pin in it. Okay. Any other questions for Justin or the department heads in the general fund? Okay. If you think of something, bring it up before the meeting where we vote to approve it. Sound like a plan?
Yes.
All right, everybody's getting tired. Anything else? Justin, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm new and unfinished.
Well, I'm gonna get there.
All
All right, anything new or unfinished?
I got some.
Oh, I have one.
He's gotta go first.
Go ahead.
Thank you to Public Works for their work throughout the never-ending snowstorm. And to PD for, I know that some of those evenings, when seemed like we were getting 3 or 4 inches a night, were kind of difficult, and we're trying to get the word out. One of the things that I think residents are realizing now is that if they park next to each other or across the street from each other, there was so much snow that we can't necessarily get school buses and fire trucks and snowplows and stuff through. So we're trying to get the word out there, but thank you guys for your work. That's it.
All right, Denny.
All right, we have a celebrity here tonight, and Chris, when she was here, didn't even know it, and I go, but didn't you hear about the chief? He won the flapjack contest, and he didn't get much publicity for it, but he beat Yorkville and Oswego, and Dwight Beard chickened out, but his assistant, Phil, won it. I don't know if he was in Florida flipping them, practicing, and the rumor was that he's going to retire in 3-4 years, and then maybe he might want to take a part-time job at IHOP. So we're just leaving it at that. But he did win it. I hope he gets his picture in the paper, because Dwight always did.
I think I saw it, right? It was in the ledger. Maybe?
Yeah, it was a story about Flapjack Phil. It was amazing.
Flapjack Phil, I love it. Flappy.
Mark,
Thanks for coming tonight, Chief.
could we
Appreciate it.
put that on on his golf cart for Montgomery Fest, please? Flapjack Phil?
All right. I like hanging out with you guys. Anybody got anything else? No. All right. Future meetings, Plan Commission, March 4th is?
No, we're not having.
All right. That will likely be canceled. Our next village board meeting is March 8th at 7 PM in this room. With that, we do not have executive session. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger. Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And we're adjourned. Thank you.